Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of March 18th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Ford,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bullock,
Here.
Councilman Amador,
Here.
one more time. Hold it for a minute, see if that works. There you go. Thank you. Councilman Benson,
Here.
Councilwoman Carson,
Present.
Councilman Teeter,
Here.
Councilman McEldowney,
Here.
Councilwoman Elliott,
Present.
Councilman Douglas.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record show that everyone's here this evening. I'd like to start the meeting by having everybody stand and join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, if the staff will go around with the microphone and allow the audience to introduce themselves. Thank you.
My name is Enrique. I'm going to introduce you my daughter, Paola Chavez, her mom, and her grandma.
My name is Melissa Nelson, and I'm a teacher at Adams City Middle School.
Hi, my name is Simukalini Vongsa, and this is my mom, Cipriana Ramos, and this is my sister, Sanikalini Vongsa, and this is my cousin, Elizabeth Avila, and my cousin, Ronaldo Avila.
Peyton Spratler.
Dathan Romero.
Baby Thomas.
Danny Thomas.
Dulce Ceja.
Miguel Lopez.
Chelsea Torres. Rosa Castellano.
Ramon Torres. Miguel Villalobos. Miguel Villalobos.
María Gil.
Edgar Villalobos.
Cepi Martinez.
Juan Torres.
Carmela Torres. Jesse Mascarenas. Geraldine Soltero. Liz Lovato. Adriana Torres. Leticia Fernandez. Tina Fernandez.
Guillermo Serna.
Maureen Olson.
RDC Wall. Eddie and my mom, Sandra.
Joy Bishop.
Gene Leffel, Board of Adjustment.
Ricardo Perez.
Jennifer Perez.
Chris Kramer, Community Development Department. Troy Smith, Police Department.
Raisha Burrell.
Kent Burrell. Rosa Burrell.
Tasia Burrell. Tezrin Burrell.
Ryan Olson, I'm a counselor at Kearney Middle School and Adams City Middle School.
Francisco Luna. David Luna.
Lourdes Luna.
Shannon Boyd, I'm a teacher at Kearney Middle School. Lucas Bios, Alexis Bios, Lorraine Bios, and Ernie Bios.
Gilbert Gonzalez.
Kathy Brevich Bogart.
Tabitha Whitehurst. Asia Vallejos.
Gilbert Gonzalez.
Angela Esparza. Richie Ringo.
No.
Michelle Halstead, Communications. Carolyn Keith, Parks and Recreation. Peggy Friesen.
Michelle Claiborne, owner of Bella Yoga.
Terry Lucero.
Jenna Johnson, Parks and Recreation.
Darren Sterling, Public Works.
Pat Sanchez, Adams 14, Superintendent.
Chris Fiddler, Superintendent, School District 27J.
Joey Kines, 27J, Board of Education.
Kevin Denke, School District 27J.
Mike Dudley. Isaac Castro.
Zach Valentine.
Stephen Williams.
Nelson Lamprich. Glenn Ellis, Engineering.
Well, thank you all for being here. We're going to get the meeting started. First item on the agenda is recognition of the Adams County Mayors and Commissioners Youth Award nominees from Commerce City. And that's what most of the folks in the audience are here for. What I'm going to do is have Jenna. Where's Jenna? Going to come forward. I'm going to have you read all of the names, and the council will come down and we'll hand out the plaques as you read the names. So will the council please join me down front, please?
So while they're coming down, just wanted to introduce the program. So Adams County Mayors and Commissioners Youth Awards is an award that recognizes teenagers between the ages of 13 and 19 who have overcome personal adversity, created positive change in their environments, or who have contributed in their own way towards making their lives or communities a better place in which to live. And this year we had 14 nominees, which is the most in my history of being with the city, the nominations that we've ever had. So we're really excited to honor our teens tonight. So guys, when I call your name, if you could just come up and you'll receive your certificate from City Council, and then we'll read your little bio, and then stay up here once you're up here, because afterwards we're going to get a group picture as well. So our first name on the list is Eduardo Alvarez Reyes. Is Eduardo here? Okay. Eddie has made a conscious effort to turn his life around despite his past choices and behavior. This year in school, he joined AVID, has raised his GPA to a 3.1, and is setting his sights on college and his future career. Eddie works hard each day to be a role model for his peers and community. Next, we have Tasia Burrell. Tasia had a rough start to her school year, but has made significant positive changes despite hardships in her life. She's become a positive leader for her peers and has increased her GPA to a 3.0. Tasia cares about her future and is working hard to use her strengths for good. All right, next we have Paola Chavez. Paola moved to the United States in second grade and has worked hard ever since to learn English and do well in school. With the help of teachers, friends, and the patience of her parents, she is now in the 8th grade with a 4.2 GPA. She's involved in many school programs and continually pushes herself to be her best. Her nominator writes that she has a huge heart and is an inspiration to all who come in contact with her. Okay, next, and sir, I'm going to not pronounce your last name right, but Samukta Luingvangsa? No? Close. Smukta faces several different challenges on a daily basis, but he has learned to work hard and reach his goals. He is involved in sports, a member of the Positive Behavior Interventions team, and is a leader in his school community. He is easygoing and has a positive relationship with everyone. He is always willing to help someone in need, and in the words of his nominator, he just makes you want to be better by being around him. And next is David Luna. Working through a lot of personal adversity, David has turned his attitude and life around and is not only benefiting himself, but others around him. He now has an attitude of respect and positivity towards himself and others. He is a leader in and out of the classroom and has worked hard to have all A's and B's. David uses the resources around him and is becoming a thriving student and teen in the community. All right, next is Jesse Mascarenas. Jesse has overcome so much in his life, including family tragedy, but despite this, he always has a smile and is respectful to everyone around him. He has a strong sense of empathy for others and an infectious personality. According to his nominator, Jesse is truly a role model and inspiration to us all on resiliency and moving forward on a positive path. Next is Kaylee Olson. Oh, they're coming? Okay, we'll come back to her. Yeah. Is Lilia Oviedo? Okay. And next is Jennifer Perez. Jenny has faced many difficulties in her young life, but has handled these situations with maturity beyond her years. She is a responsible student, sets an example for her peers, and is always there to help a friend. Jenny has a supportive network around her and is a confident role model for everyone in her life. Next is Alexandra Ramos. She's not here. All right. Adriana Torres. Audrey has overcome a lot the past year, but regardless, she is involved in school with the Interact Club, going to college and working at night, and being a great mom to her daughter. She volunteers and gives back to the community, and her peers look up to her for strength. She works hard and is determined to make her life the best it can be for her and her family. Her nominator says that she is proud to be her friend, and Audrey inspires her every day. All right, Ezekiel Torres. Ezekiel has seen how negative choices around him affect others and has made a conscious decision to be different and work hard to go in a positive direction. He wants to have a positive impact on others and currently mentors his nephews as well as joining programs like Teen Court. He desires to be a peace officer one day and continues to be a role model for others. Alexis Vallejos. Despite hardships, Alexis has worked hard to become a successful student, currently maintaining a 4.0 GPA. She is also a member of the Web Mentoring Program and continually making positive changes in her life. She uses the support of her family to motivate her and always works hard to do the right thing. Her nominator says she's a bright young lady with a huge heart whose potential is endless. And Miguel Villalobos. Miguel has taken his adversity and turned it into an advantage through a hard work ethic and positive attitude. He has a serving spirit and is involved in the school's web mentoring program as well as other school events. He's become a leader in the school and reaches out to other kids who need encouragement. He's a strong student and teen and has worked hard to get to where he is today. And then did Alexandra just come in? All right. Oh, so Miss Alexandra Ramos. Alexandra has overcome many adversities in her young life, but has come out stronger for it. Taking advantage of her support system, she pushes herself to be better and is flourishing. She cares about her education and is maintaining a 3.2 GPA as well as being involved in activities in school like basketball. Her nominator says that her resiliency is truly amazing and determination for her future is inspiring. And then did Miss Kaylee Olson come? come in. Kaylee has overcome a disease that causes her physical limitations. It adds difficulty to her daily life, but Kaylee is always a positive person and never uses her limitations as an excuse to give up. She is involved in drama club, art club, band, choir, NJHS, and her school's community leadership group. She's always looking for opportunities to help and mentor others and has a positive impact on everyone around her. Wonderful. So just to make sure, did nobody else come in while we were still? We got a lot of names. Wonderful. Well, please join me in congratulating these amazing teams. One, two, three. Okay, just one second, guys. So a couple of additional things. So all of the cities in Adams County submit their nominations and get read by the committee, and then the top 20 names get recognized at the county banquet, which this year is on Friday, April 12th. And we are lucky to have 4 of our Commerce City nominees moving on. And they may not even know it yet, actually. They might be finding out just right now. So please join me in congratulating Samukta Loning. I'm going to get this right. Jesse Mascarenas, Alexandra Ramos, and Adriana Torres will be moving on to the county banquet. Also, these teens would not be able to be recognized if it weren't for their nominators. So if you nominated one of these amazing teens, if you could please stand and be recognized as well. Well, thank you everyone so much. And for the youth, if you guys could just meet me in the back once we're done, we have a few more goodies for you as well. So, great.
A little something to say, so if they can just take their seats for a second, and then
Sure.
I'll give everybody a break to either.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll start off by saying all the years that I've been involved with the city, one of my favorite events is the Metro Mayor's Commissioners Youth Awards. The youth that you saw in front of you this evening are the heroes in our community today. And it's not just what they have overcome and what they've done, it's the bringing forward of the other children and the other youth that they're around, setting a solid example of how you should be in school with grades, how you should handle different problems that may occur in your lives. And I really have a lot of respect for the young kids that overcome a lot of the adversities, and they get it, and they can share that with the others around them. So congratulations to all of the youth that was before us today, and I look forward to seeing the 3 that are moving on to the county level at the banquet, the 4. There's 4 at the county level at the banquet. So thank you very much for being here tonight, and thanks for playing an active role in our community. Let me see, there's Councilwoman Carson, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll just make it short, but I wanted to thank you all for being such an inspiration. I know that you have had lots of obstacles in your way, and you have overcome them. Some of you probably don't even think twice when you realize you have to overcome those obstacles, but it speaks highly of you and who you are, so congratulations and thank you.
Mr. McEldowney.
I would just echo Councilwoman Carson's comments. Don't underestimate what you've accomplished, and don't underestimate the recognition that your sponsor has given you in terms of their nomination. Somebody has stood up and recognized that you've stood out and stood up. So don't lose that motivation. Don't lose that spark that caused you to do what you've done. Keep it up, and know that your community is behind you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Amador.
I would like to thank all of you youth for making a choice every day to get up and continually work on self-improvement. I was there at one point, and I was and still am a product of Commerce City and the school district. So congratulations.
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the youth for coming forward and receiving your certificate, and just recognize that it wasn't just the kids, it's the families behind them and the community. Without the community and the support, these kids wouldn't be here today, so I appreciate that.
Okay, we're going to move on to proclamations, and the first proclamation is recognizing the Adams County Mayors and Commissioners Youth Award nominees from Commerce City. We've done that. Year of the Student. Is there a proclamation that goes along with the Metro Mayors? No. Just wanting to make sure I don't skip something. Next, we're going to move on to Year of the Student. On behalf of the council, I would like to have the city attorney read the proclamation calling on members of the 69th General Assembly to make 2013 the Year of the Student. Mr. Gaylor, will you read that proclamation, please?
Proclamation reads, whereas public education is the bedrock of our democracy, fundamental to individual opportunity, and the key to Colorado's economic recovery, prosperity, and future. And whereas Commerce City will thrive when every student graduates as a contributing, well-rounded, well-prepared citizen and lifelong learner. And whereas the state of Colorado has faced multiple years of budget shortfalls, resulting in over $2.6 billion in cumulative cuts to P through 12 and higher education funding. And whereas these cuts impede the ability of our school districts to implement all the strategies necessary to ensure the successful educational experience of every student. And whereas local and federal funding sources cannot overcome recent budget cuts and chronic state underfunding. And whereas a broad coalition of organizations throughout Colorado have joined together to demand meaningful legislative action in 2013 toward improvement investment in Colorado's schools, colleges, and universities. Now therefore, I, on behalf of the City Council, joins with the Year of the Student Project in calling on the future members of the 69th General Assembly to make 2013 the Year of the Student by using the 2013 legislative session to create and find funding for a public education finance system that matches, reforms, mandates, and accountability measures with the resources necessary to make all students successful.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
I would move that the council approve this proclamation.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve the proclamation as read by the city attorney. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried unanimously. I'd like to invite the council once again down front to give the two proclamations to the superintendents of the school districts. I'm almost to the point where I'm going to excuse all the students, so just hang with me for 1 second. Does any of the council have any comments on the Year of the Student proclamation? Mr. McEldowney.
I do, but I wanted to, with your permission, see if either of the superintendents had any comments they'd like to make about the matter first.
Well, they're gonna be doing some presentations here in just a little bit.
Perfect.
So they'll have an opportunity. Okay. But after spending some time with both districts, we have 2 school districts in our community. The importance of education for our community, and a lot of people don't understand. They think you're the city. You don't get yourself involved with school district matters. And it's quite the opposite. It's important that we work closely with the other entities within our community. Because you see, it's very hard for this council and this city to move forward building new homes, creating new jobs, bringing in new commercial opportunities, if we don't have a good education system. People moving from other areas, they don't want to move somewhere where the education for their children is not good. So they go hand in hand. Us creating a good community is very reliant upon the education systems within our community. Not only that, the biggest and most important piece is that it's going to be the youth that you saw up here before us and the other youth in our school district that will be up here on this dais at some point in time. And we want to make sure that we're educating our community and our students in our community to be able to take on some of the leadership roles that will be facing your generation. So with those 2 big pieces coupled together, we can't build a community without first building a good educational system. So our partnership continues to get better, and that's why this council is supportive of the Year of the Student and asking the congressional delegates to help with funding of our education system so that we can have the best school districts in the nation. So thank you all for being here today. I will now allow the students to all leave and their parents, but you're welcome back to this council meeting anytime you want to come. If you just want to come to listen, if you come for information, whatever it may be, this is your city council chambers, and you're always welcome here. So thank you for being here this evening. Go ahead and allow everybody to leave before I continue on with the agenda.
Kleenex because the story. I'm standing there tearing up just watching.
Oh, thank you.
We'll go ahead and get back into our agenda now. Next item on the agenda, we're going to have both of the superintendents, one from each school district, come up and do a presentation, and not in any particular order. We're going to start with Mr. Sanchez.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Members of council, Mayor Ford, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for having me here this evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Buenas tardes. Ojalá que todos están bien. Hope you're all doing well with us this evening. We do have... Great. So if you could help me just start the PowerPoint, then I will move forward. Is it... trying to... Just help me start the slideshow. So I'll try to be as brief as possible and succinct. You also do have a copy of our current strategic plan that is going to be translated into Spanish as well. Just want to review for you some of the changes that we're dealing with the school district, as well as what we're doing about it to make things better and to improve academic performance for our school district. The slide in front of you now really talks to you about why there was a need for change in the state of Colorado. And the long story short is about 5-6 years ago, there was an analysis done of all the evaluations of teachers throughout the state of Colorado, and that evaluation determined that about 97% of the teachers in the state of Colorado were receiving an evaluation that said that they were proficient or advanced in the craft of teaching. And at the same time, about 40 to 50% of the students in the state of Colorado were not scoring proficient or advanced on the state test. So this became quite a paradox. That was really the initial reason why there was a need to look at changing how we do evaluation of teachers, and how now, in today's world, Senate Bill 10-191 was approved so that teachers and everyone that works in schools, administrators, superintendents, are all evaluated, 50% of it based on student growth and 50% of it based on other qualitative measures. But student growth is really what it's all about, and the goal is for those evaluations in the future will align with how student performance plays out. So the short story there is that everyone's skin needs to be in the game when it comes to educating kids. So this is really the framework for that evaluation for principals. You'll see half of that in red is circled, and those are the qualitative measures. The quantitative measures are student growth. It's the same for teachers, and you'll see qualitative and quantitative measures. And the reason that's important is because that's how we are evaluating teachers, evaluating employees in the district. And what you have in front of you is our district accreditation rating. The current state of our district, this is based on last year's performance data, is that we are accredited with turnaround. In districts that are similar to our size, we are the bottom performing school district of our size in the state of Colorado. We are second from the bottom. The other districts that are near us performance-wise are districts like Aguilar, Carville, Ignacio, all very small rural districts. We're in the bottom. We're second from the bottom, even that as it relates to that. So focus on academics is really where I'm going to go next to tell you what we're doing to change things. These are some of the basic metrics that we have relative to that school performance framework. All of this is available on SchoolView, and you could look at this in depth whenever you want. I'm probably not going to bore you with too much of it here, but these are the metrics that a district's evaluated by. This is a snapshot of our district. Green arrows demonstrate areas where we've seen improvement. Red arrows demonstrate where we've had a decline in academic performance, and the yellow arrows means that the data is flat. In the analysis of the data, in about 2008, when primary language was eliminated as an instrument to help students acquire a second language faster, that's when we began to see a significant decline from 2008 to 2012 performance data. We are also entering year 3 of a 5-year clock. That year 3 of the 5-year clock will start July of 2013. And if significant improvement isn't made within 2 years, schools in our district can be chartered. And that means that either an individual school or the entire district is at risk of being chartered. Here's what we're doing to change that. I'm going to move through this. So here's some of our targets, is to make sure that we start moving towards proficiency at each grade level, that we move towards the median growth percentile. Long story short, instead of boring you with the data analysis, I'll tell you that these are all reasons why academically we need to change it, but the emotional reason is kids deserve better. Kids deserve a chance. Kids deserve to leave our district with a high-quality diploma without the need for remediation. So I'm going to share with you some of the things we're doing to move forward. One of the things that we've been working with our leadership team is to develop an understanding of how race has an impact on student achievement and how you have to see color in a positive sense so that you can work with kids to move them forward. And I think the biggest thing I'll tell you there is that this idea of seeing our kids as having assets instead of deficits is really critical in helping us plan and helping us to create a strategy, and seeing that kids, instead of seeing them for their deficits, we see them with assets that they bring to the table, being bilingual, being bicultural, being from diverse backgrounds. And kids of poverty definitely need to hear that from you, because I know that students can see instantly who really cares about them and who doesn't. So working from a philosophy level sounds maybe a little redundant for people that aren't in education, but sometimes we do have to remind people why they got in the work that we do in working with kids, and that's really critical. And having this asset view, focusing on what they can do, not what they can't do. The other part of it is the prescriptive nature of how we need to get into how we do teaching and what the craft is, and not leaving anything to chance. So you're going to see us moving in a direction of getting really clear about what we expect from teachers, how we want them to use time, how we assess students for learning, and how we use that information to drive next steps with instruction. And also putting things in place so that kids that are needing extra help will get extra help and time, as well as kids who are ready to accelerate will get extra enrichment and opportunities to move up. So it's not just about dealing with kids who are struggling, it's also dealing with kids who need enrichment. It's really both. So I'll tell you a simple thing we've done is also move the target from 80% or 50% or 70% to 100%. This might sound like a small thing, but philosophically it's important that we have the belief that all kids can achieve at high levels, and then our job is to put the system in place to make that happen. We're a long way off, but that is the target. And the biggest thing that you'll see is that teachers matter, and how they behave and how they treat kids is really critical. We are implementing a national model that we have obtained from our partner in CDE and University of Virginia. This book called Driven by Data is really a model for instruction. The district that we're paralleling is in Cincinnati, Ohio. It went from being worst in the state to first in the state in a period of 3 years. So the model we've adopted will show significant growth within 3 years if done with fidelity, and that's what we're in the process of implementing and rolling out for next year. So I think part of what I would share is this Martin Luther King quote as I begin to close, is really we have to make some changes. We have to make some strategic and structural changes to how we do business for the purpose of helping serve all kids at high levels. I want to share this slide with you. This is some pretty typical data you'll see in the realm of education, but I thought you would find it interesting. So if a student enters at the 50th percentile performance-wise in an average school with an average teacher, they're going to leave at the 50th percentile. They'll stay flat. If they come into a highly ineffective school with a highly ineffective teacher, they'll enter at the 50th percentile and exit at the 3rd percentile. They actually lose ground. If they enter a highly effective school with a highly ineffective teacher, they still lose ground. If they enter a highly ineffective school with a highly effective teacher, they actually increase in spite of the highly ineffective school. But if they enter a highly effective school with a highly effective teacher, you will see tremendous growth from 50th percentile to 96th percentile. And a highly effective school with an average teacher, they still make tremendous gain. The reason I share that with you is because we do get some criticism. We've had some turnover in our teaching ranks. We've lost some great people. We've also lost some people that probably shouldn't work with kids. And as we go into the season and hiring for next year, our goal is to put absolutely outstanding teachers in front of every kid in this district so that they feel loved, cared for, and pushed academically. And I know that I always share that slide before I say that because it's important for you to know that there's a reason for it, not just because it's something that I've thought, or it's something that we've been studying, but it's something that's pretty well proven with data to back it up. And I think the last slide is really, we still have the time. We still have 2 to 3 years to turn it around. We're focusing deeply right now on the high school, on Adams City High School and Lester Arnold, and doing some restructuring. And you'll see positive things happening there. We'll work in collaboration and continue to work in collaboration with the city, as well as all of the stakeholders in the community. And what I would just leave you with is the hardest part of changing an organization is changing the philosophy of the adults. The easiest part of my job is working with kids. The kids know, the kids have an instinct. If we pay attention and listen, and our board's philosophy is when the community and parents and everybody gets involved, our kids will achieve at high levels. And we look forward to our partnership, and I got to share with you that I really have been embraced by the city, by all the entities. Everybody I call has been great. So I want to commend you. And I know you don't always hear positive things, but I want you to hear that they've really gone out of their way to reach out to me personally and to our staff, and I look forward to continuing our partnership. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll invite Superintendent Fiddler up to give us a piece about 27J.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Michelle. Mayor, members of council, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm going to focus a little bit on the proclamation you just made and start by saying thank you. All the things that Pat just discussed in terms of the initiatives they're working on in Adams 14 cost money. And it takes quality people, and it takes people in general to make those changes. We have similar challenges in 27J, and I'm going to walk you through some of the, if you're not familiar with the cuts we've experienced across the state of Colorado in K-12 education, I'll work you through that tonight. I guess I've got that, don't I? There we go. So a little bit about School District 27J. We were at a little over 15,600 kids funded this year. You can see just a breakdown of staff and schools. What I want to stress to you all is we have 23 schools, 18 of which are district managed. However, I want to speak to this group tonight. 3 of those elementary schools serve Commerce City residents. Timing Elementary School, Second Creek Elementary School, and Turnberry Elementary School. 2 of the middle schools that are district managed serve Commerce City residents, Otho Stewart Middle School and Prairie View Middle School. And then Prairie View High School, where I was principal last year and the previous 4 years, serve Commerce City residents. So we are very much have reached out to the council, I think, in an effort to be your partner, and we've been very pleased with how that's has worked out thus far. I can't tell you how thrilled I am by the proclamation. I was checking with my fact finder, Mr. Denke, back there. I want to tell you that unless we have it inaccurate, you're the first municipality to pass any proclamation in support of Year of the Student. And I want to congratulate you and thank you from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the students that I serve, on behalf of the students that Pat serves, and on behalf of the students in the state of Colorado. We have a huge issue in public ed, and it's just amazing to me that more people aren't upset about it. So I'll walk you through that. You bet.
Oh, it's okay? It's Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson, will you please make sure you give $5 to the city attorney for that mistake of allowing that phone to go off in my meeting? Hey, you know what? So far, tonight, you've disrupted the meeting. I just want to make it clear. Thank you. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a quick look at what we experienced in specific to 27J, but I want to stress that the same impact has happened to all the school districts in Colorado. All 178 school districts have been impacted in the last 4 years because of the state's cuts. But specific to us in 27J, we saw a $19 million reduction in this fiscal year alone. The current negative factor for the School Finance Act of 1994 is at 16%. So if you're not familiar with how the School Finance Act is formulated, for the past 3 years, the state has run through the formula and then got to the end and decided what they could really pay and instituted the negative factor. And they've taken that percentage times what they're supposed to pay. We are currently at about 85 cents on the dollar for all school districts in Colorado. I just don't know how that's okay. The state at least put a measure in place in the last 3 years to address their shortfalls in terms of their revenue. In four budget years ago, we actually had a rescission. That's what started this downward slide. We have lost $48 million over the last 4 years in 27J, and I know that Superintendent Sanchez has a similar story for Adams 14. What that's meant for budget cuts for 27J, it's reduction in staff. Our class sizes, in terms of a ratio of students to teachers, higher than ever. We've cut programs. We've increased fees to include transportation fees and fees for academic core classes. None of that's very popular with our parents, I can assure you. Just a quick look at the total school district per pupil mill levy and override funding. Adams 14 information is up there as well. What you see there is the 5 largest Adams County school districts. The ones you don't see are Bennett and Strasburg. They are in Adams County, but they're much smaller than the ones you see there. And I've shared this before with this group, and please accept my apology for doing it again, but it's important for me to drive it home. We're down there in red at $6,270.49 per pupil. We have the very dubious honor in 27J of ranking 176 out of 172nd, out of 178 school districts. And again, Adams 14 is in a little bit better shape, but I will tell you again, they're operating from the state on 85 cents on the dollar. It's just not okay, and I want to thank you again for the proclamation. I can't tell you how happy I am with that. Why you're the student, obviously you've embraced that. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for doing that. But it brings attention to the devastating impact on the state education budgets. Creates a sense of urgency. Encourages state legislators to act on this issue in this session. If you're not aware, Senator Michael Johnson has introduced Senate Bill 213, which Pat and I were talking out this evening in terms of it may not be perfect, but we're going to support it because we need something. The analogy that I've used, which is probably a bad one, when you're starving to death, you might like a turkey dinner, but we'll take a sandwich. And that's what this feels like to some degree, but we certainly need the help. And then just a resource there for you to reach out to the legislators, to see if they have responded to some folks who have asked them to follow that current bill. So with that, I think that's it. And I would sit down and let you guys ask questions of both Pat and myself. But thank you so much for endorsing and the proclamation on Year of the Student. Again, the first municipality in the state of Colorado to do so, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, I'd like to thank both districts, not just the superintendents, but the staff that are here from both districts. I noticed that there's a board member in the back for District 14. I don't know if any of the board members for 27J are here. Yep, Joanne. Okay. Thank you for all being here tonight. I think it's important to continue to build our relationships between the entities because we do have the ability to help each other. And I look forward to continuing working to strengthen that relationship. So thank you to all of the representatives from both districts that are here tonight. Anyone else have anything?
Thank you.
Well, hey, then now is the time for questions or concerns. Let them have it, JD.
I was going to sit here quietly, but I just can't. Mr. Sanchez, you speak about teachers, and I can't say enough about teachers because the way we look at teachers has changed over the decades. Anything we know was given to us by a teacher, and a good teacher really is what makes the difference in a child's life, and it turns things around. I don't know where the environment came from that we no longer have this high respect for those people who take our children and educate them every day. Our children certainly aren't taught that respect, and it's a profession that does not pay well. Everybody knows it doesn't pay well. It's a profession that people get into because they have a passion and a desire to work with students. And I really do believe that we have to turn a culture around. And the culture is in public education, supporting that, supporting the people who work in public education, whether it's the teacher or whether it's the custodian or the bus driver. But this culture needs to change. America is public education, and we need to stand behind it 100%. And if you don't, we're all in big trouble then. But I want to thank those of you out there, especially the board members, who donate your time so generously to the students and the superintendents. I give you credit. It's not an easy job anymore to work in public education. So thank you. And like I said, we all need to work together to change this environment.
Mr. McEldowney?
I would echo Ms. Carson's comments and just extend a personal thanks to the administration and the representatives from both districts. I know how tirelessly you support our students and our communities. As the mayor said earlier, this is about our students, but it's about the communities as a whole. It's about the state as a whole. All too often we hear from folks who say, well, my kids are through school, or I don't have kids in school. It doesn't matter to me. But it does. Everybody wants that next great employer to help raise the bar for your community, or to be the differentiator. When folks are looking for a site to locate a new business or expand, they're looking for locations where there is a population that they can draw on to pull into that business. If we want to be that community, we have to invest in our schools. People pick neighborhoods, people pick communities based on the quality of those schools. For anyone that's been from Colorado for any amount of time, you know that people look to districts like Cherry Creek or Boulder or Jefferson County because of the schools. There's no reason that we can't be in that same space, but it requires not only the investment that our teachers and administrators are giving to the districts today and have been, but clearly the financial investment that we as a state have not been making nearly to the extent that we need to. This year the student is no guarantee. The measure that Dr. Fidler talked about that's currently under consideration at the House needs to be supported, and we need to be talking to our legislators actively and letting them know just how important it is that they make this a priority. When things are a priority, they can get things done. We need to make sure that they don't feel like they aren't being held to task in that regard. We cannot let the session end without action being taken. If you're not familiar with the measure, reach out to a teacher, reach out to somebody on the board, reach out to the administration, look at the 2013 Year of the Student website, look at the information, get an understanding of what's going on, use the website to submit a link or to submit a letter to your legislator. They'll fill out the letter. You just have to put in your email. They'll tell you who to send it to. In fact, they'll send it to them for you, and then they'll help you follow up, because that follow-up is key. We have got to make this happen for our kids and for our communities. So, again, thank you to both of our districts for everything you do, and here's to hoping that together we can see this thing through.
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to piggyback on what Jason said. I'm not going to, some things I wanted to say, I don't want to repeat what Jason just said, but I am support, because without our students, we have no future. And I think Colorado has recognized that, and our students can't afford another year as business as usual. So we need to move this state ahead as it comes to the kids, and when it comes to cuts, I don't know why they always want to take the money from the student, because that is our future. So I appreciate both school districts being here tonight, and I totally support the Year of the Student 2013. Thank you.
And before I allow you all to leave and enjoy the rest of your evening, I just would like to say, I'm a product of District 14. That's where I graduated from. However, a few of my kids have graduated from District 14, a few from 27J. I know we have great educational opportunities. We just need, and you guys are doing the right thing, to focus those needs. 27J needs more money. 14 needs more community support. And I think it's great if the two of you can sit down and talk about how do you get this done and how do I get that done, because we are truly partners. Maybe two different school districts, but we are one community. And going to the football games at Adams City, I want to see those stands full, which I haven't seen for a long time, not like they used to be when I was in school. And I want you all to know it's okay to request this council and our families to participate in school functions, whether that be homecomings, whether that be football games. I think it's important that as a community we help both districts grow. So thank you very much for being here tonight and giving us your presentations, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is citizen communication. We have two people that have signed up. However, before I call on the two that have signed up, I have noticed the Boy Scouts in the audience, and I think it would be nice if you can come up. I'm assuming you're here to meet the requirements of an award or a rank or a badge. I'd like all the Boy Scouts to come on up to the podium and explain to the council your presence and how we may be able to help you. Just give us your name and address and let us know who you are.
Okay. Hello, Council and Mayor. My name is Steve Williams, and we are Troop 704 from basically from the Reunion area. We are here as part of the Citizenship of the Community Merit Badge. You guys want to talk to him while I go get that?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Zach Valentine.
I'm Isaac Castro.
Our specific requirement was a 10-day city or town council or school board meeting and choose one of these issues discussed at the meeting where difference of opinions was expressed and explained to your counselor or person when we meet them why you agree with one opinion more than you do the other. So like we have to pick an issue and then explain our views on it, or then what you as a council and the mayor talked about on that issue.
Well, I want to let you know you're always welcome here. I want to also let you know that it's okay to talk to my staff here or the city council staff and have your scoutmaster line up a flag ceremony, whatever it may be that we can help you with to accelerate and achieve more with the scouting. So thank you for being here this evening, and I hope you get everything you need. And if there's anything I can do, if you'll just talk to one of my staff members, and we can make that happen. Okay? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll go ahead and call the two on the list that has signed up to speak. We'll start with Pam Spratler. Please state your name and address for the record. And good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see y'all back. Pam Spratler, 7041 East 75th Place. I just want to say a thank you to the police chief for getting back to me. He did call me back about 3 days after everything got kind of hairy, and I haven't been able to get back with him, but I wanted to let everybody know thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Michelle.
Hello.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Claybon, and I am here to discuss the item on your agenda. It's number 717-0013 regarding the Bell Creek signage.
Okay, I need to hold you there for a second because that's part of a public hearing. And when I open that public hearing, I will give anyone in the audience who wants to testify during that public hearing an opportunity. It would be unprofessional for us to allow you to do it during citizen communication, but you will have your opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on into the agenda. First, we have the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda this evening. Is there any member wishes to discuss this in detail, or anyone in the audience who has previously asked to speak on this item? Seeing no one. Mr. Bullock?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. City Attorney, please read the title.
Resolution 2013-16, title reads, approving intergovernmental agreement among the City of Commerce City, the City of Thornton, the County of Adams, Colorado, and the Colorado Department of Transportation regarding the widening and enhancement of the 104th Avenue Bridge over the South Platte River.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I have a motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Jason?
It didn't take.
No, it didn't take.
Mine's not lit up.
Okay. Try it again.
Did it take finally?
Steve's the only one. Yours took. Steve? It's not lit up. No. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rick, I need you to vote. She had to redo it. Let the record show that it's passed. The consent agenda is approved unanimously by the council. Next item on the agenda is public hearings, the public hearing portion of the meeting. We have public hearing Z-898-12, and it's my understanding this hearing needs to be continued to June 3rd, 2013, and I need a motion to do so. Mr. McEldowney.
Would move to continue the meeting to June 3rd, 2013.
Mr. Amador. I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing Z-898-12 to June 3rd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next is Z-717-0013. I'll now open the public hearing and invite the staff forward to make their presentation.
Mr. Mayor, before staff commences the presentation, I call to the council's attention that on the dais in front of each of you is an ordinance that corrects the ordinance that was in your packet. There were some clerical errors in that ordinance, so the one in front of you is the correct ordinance, so that's the one that we should be referring to during the course of the proceeding. There are no substantive changes. It simply changes some of the language in the title, and clearly it makes it clear that the PUD regulations as amended, as proposed for amendment, are adopted as part of this ordinance if it passes.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. The next case before you is Z-717-00-13. Bell Creek Commercial Properties is requesting to amend the signage regulations in the Bell Creek PUD zone document for all filings in the Bell Creek subdivision. Subject site is located at 104th Avenue and Highway 85. This is Bell Creek right here. Got Highway 85 and 104th. It's currently zoned PUD, and it's called out for a mix of future land uses in the comp plan, including high and medium residential, open space, commercial, and public. Case history for Bell Creek: the original PUD was approved in 2000, and filings 1, 3, and 4 were platted later that same year, with filing 2 being platted in 2001. So what they're proposing as part of the PUD amendment request impacts the signage in Bell Creek. So for commercial area D, which is this section down here, they're proposing to allow tenants that occupy the ends of buildings with non-street frontage to be allowed additional signage. They're proposing to allow tenants with access on the rear of a multi-tenant building to have additional awning identification. And they're also proposing to allow internally illuminated logos in that commercial area D. For commercial area D pad sites, they're proposing to allow canopy signage on motor vehicle fueling facilities. For the Town Center commercial area A, They're proposing to allow internally illuminated logo cabinets as well. And then the most significant change proposed is to project monumentation signs. So for that, they're proposing to have 3 types of joint identification signs along US Highway 85 and 104th Avenue. Frontages is shown in this sheet, and 2 additional subdivision identification signs. So what they're proposing is a subdivision identification sign up here at the north along Highway 85. This is the sign type they're proposing right here. Then they're allowing a joint identification sign at Longs Peak and Highway 85. The intent of this sign is to advertise for the town center businesses as well as identify the Bell Creek community. There's an LED reader board that's proposed as part of that sign. That's this sign type right here. Then they're proposing a sign in the southern commercial area to identify the tenants that are located on the west portion of Bell Creek Boulevard to give them some signage along Highway 85. So that's this sign type here. And then they're proposing a identification sign for the Bell Creek corner shops, which is what they're calling this retail area. Right here, that's this sign, I believe. And those are the identification signs they're proposing as part of the PUD amendment. So the Planning Commission felt that the number of signs proposed is appropriate. They serve different purposes, but they all have a uniform aesthetic. The signs feel like a cohesive part of the overall Bell Creek community. The proposed signage amendments will help with the economic development of the Bell Creek commercial areas, and no adverse impacts by creating sight distance issues or obstructing the floodplain will be created because of these signs. The Planning Commission reviewed this against the rezoning approval criteria and the PUD amendments, and on February 5th, they voted unanimously to forward the recommendation forward the request with a favorable recommendation. So staff can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Does the council have any questions for staff? Mr. Amador?
I do have a question regarding the monument signs, the slide showing monument 1, 2, and 3. How tall are these signs?
They're all about 12 feet, I believe, to the top of the column. I actually have a zoom in on some of the signs. Maybe that'll help. So here you can see 10 feet is the column height, and so the actual signage for the subdivision identification is 5 feet for the monument part.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the applicant present?
Yes, Peggy Friesen, a representative for the applicant, is here to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Friesen. I'm with Galloway and Company, 5300 DTC Parkway, Greenwood Village, Colorado, 80111. I am here representing the undeveloped property owners, which is the Bell Creek Commercial Properties, LLC. And we are proposing tonight an amendment to the PUD of one sheet only of the PUD, which is sheet 12, which is the existing sign plan for Bell Creek. The purpose is severalfold. One of the purposes of doing this is to establish a greater identity of the Bell Creek area, both the residential as well as the commercial. And we are proposing the 3 types of signs. Right now, between the PUD and your code, all of these signs are allowed. We're just trying to bring a cohesive plan together where we've pulled elements from the internal Bell Creek development that's out there now, and we're trying to come in with a cohesive plan that would strengthen that identity by drawing on such features that you've seen. And Jenny, if you don't mind going back to one of the shots that shows, we're trying to bring in the Bell Creek Tower element on the column and also bringing in the materials and the colors that are represented right now in the community. And so the 3 types of signs that we're proposing, really there's actually 2 types. There's subdivision sign, which your code allows, 1 on each street frontage, but we're dividing that into 1 subdivision sign on the north side, which would be just Bell Creek, which would be primarily to sign and identify the residential portion. And then on the south side, which was sign A, would be the Bell Creek commercial or Bell Creek corner shops, which is for an identity, subdivision identity of the commercial area on the south side. Right now, the PUD allows project monumentation signs, and they allow one on each street frontage, one on 85 and one on 104. We're proposing one additional sign down in the southern part of the commercial area, which would allow for identity, as Jenny said, on the internal shops that would be located on the west side of Bell Creek that do not have highway frontage, or any kind of street frontage for that matter. So right now, the PUD allows 200 square feet of signs and 2 signs, one on each street. We're actually adding 1 sign, proposing that we add 1 more sign on that southern portion. And the overall signage, however, of these are actually reduced to what they could have per sign, but we end up with about 27 square feet additional than what is allowed right now. So the request, again, we feel has brought several elements into it that complement the internal elements and design elements within the center, that being the stone that's on the column, the colors, the bell tower and the bell insignia that you see on each column, as well as the metal, the kind of the angled look that you see in your community center. The sign that's located at Longs Peak right now is one that would be replaced if the Metro District chooses, so it would be in complement with the rest of the sign program. And that one, they've asked for a reader board to be added, which would allow them to promote community events at the community center of the school. So that's the purpose of adding that component, the LED reader board, which is limited to 30 square feet. I think that really is basically the summary. Thank you, Jenny, for the thorough report, and I'm available for questions.
Does the council have any questions of the applicant? Thank you. Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to step forward and testify? Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Michelle Claiborne, 9495 East 108th Place in Henderson. And I am here to represent my company, which is located in Bell Creek. The current signage that we have at Bell Creek, I'm solely responsible for those signs. In 2010, I opened up a yoga studio inside Bell Creek. Bell Creek has never had signage until I came into that neighborhood and opened up a studio. I went and got all the guidelines and rules, regulations from the city, from the HOA, from the Metro District, made sure I'd followed all the rules. And I did so accordingly and was able to get the signage on 104th Avenue and Bell Creek Boulevard, as well as the sign on Longs Peak Drive and Highway 85. They're about 8 foot by 10 foot. And so I'm here to speak on behalf of Bella Yoga and all the other businesses and the schools that are going to be affected by this proposal. It's not been made very clear to me as to exactly who's going to be on the sign. The existing sign that the Metro District wants to tear down belongs to myself. It also belongs to all the current retail space owners in Bell Creek, the schools, and the apartment homes. And nowhere on the proposal did I see any mention of the schools that are in the neighborhood. We've been talking a lot about schools tonight. I don't see any mention of the Bell Creek Charter School on there. I don't see a mention of the Bright Horizons preschool daycare or the apartment homes. Bell Creek is a town center, and my business, along with a few other little businesses, are right in the center of the community, along with the schools. So what is the Metro District's intention? Will Mo Haraf, who's the owner of Haraf's Food Market, will he be in the retail space that he's been there now for 8 years? Will he be guaranteed a spot on the sign? Will I be guaranteed a place on the sign? I've been there 2.5 years. What about the schools, the apartment homes? The current sign that the Metro District wants to tear down was carefully designed, and it includes all the retail spaces, the schools, the apartment homes. I spent many, many hours facilitating this huge project in getting these signs. I made sure that we followed all the guidelines. Bell Creek, like I said, is a town center. So Bella Yoga, which is my company, Haraf's Food Market, the schools, and the apartment homes, we are the center of the town, we're the heart of the town center. So everyone that is currently on that sign that they are proposing to rip down has already paid a lot of money to have the signage and this much-needed exposure. All the businesses that were had previously been in the town center have failed due to no signage, except Haraf's. That's because there's nothing around. So without signage, the drive-by traffic will not know that there's a preschool and daycare there. They will not know that there's a charter school there. We talked a lot about schools earlier. The charter school is grades K through 8. Both of my children attend there and have been going there. My daughter's been going there for 9 years. They will not know that there's apartment homes there, or a yoga studio, or a convenience store. It sounds like they're going to be installing it's to my understanding, I may be wrong, but they may be installing a gas station, a 7-Eleven with a convenience store inside the 7-Eleven, which is going to also hurt Haraf's Food Market, who's been there for 8 years. And just to speak on his behalf, because he couldn't be here tonight, because he works from 5 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. So he's made the sacrifice to take that retail space and to give the community something. I've made the sacrifice to take that retail space. It was vacant for over a year before I took it over, and I've been there 2.5 years now, and it's just now barely starting to be stable. And so the signage is huge. It may be a little tiny sign, but to me it's a huge sign. So what I'm proposing is I'm just asking that if the city does approve their proposal to tear down our signs and replace it with a monument sign, I'm just asking there to be some kind of stipulation that the current retail space owners are going to have a space on this sign, including the schools and including the apartment homes. So I just greatly appreciate your consideration in this matter.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments or questions from the council? Mr. Bullock?
Okay, in regards to her request, Jenny, are they going to be allowed to have space on this sign? Are they going, first of all, I should ask, are they going to remove the sign that's already there that they have, that she made mention of?
Yeah, the sign that she's discussing was permitted as one of the project monumentation signs under the original PUD zone document, with the, I guess, the disclaimer that should the Metro District decide to remove the sign, it's on their property and they would be allowed to do so. So when the Bell Creek commercial came to the city to discuss signage for the Bell Creek community, we worked with them to make sure they would include a new sign that matched the proposed signage they were going to do throughout the community at Longs Peak to replace this sign, and they agreed to do so. But it's up to the Metro District who's going to own and maintain the sign on who gets to be on the sign. That's not part of what the city reviewed.
That's what I was going to bring up, and I would refer to Mr. Gaylor or staff. I know that you have met the requirements of the Metro District to install your sign, and it's a Metro District issue, not a city issue, as to what goes on that sign. We have to approve the amendment to the PUD to allow the additional sign, but we don't dictate to the Metro District of who's on the sign and who's not on the sign. And I know you've already been through a grueling process to get the sign that you have, but as much as I hate to tell you, I think that legally you need to work with the Metro District to ensure that you and Harif and the others have a place on the sign, because really it's up to the Metro District and not to the City Council. Mr. Gaylor?
Yeah, the city can approve location, size of sign, but content on the sign is not within the purview of what the city can do. I think just as a point of information, since the applicant's here, she could be asked the question. That's obviously the question that's been raised, but I don't think the city can interject itself into what can go on the sign.
Thank you. So I was right, but you know what, since the applicant's here and you're here, I would like the applicant to come back up and address what she feels comfortable on your concerns, if that's okay with the applicant.
Thank you. I would like to address that. I was, well, as Jenny mentioned, when we first came in, this was not one of the signs that we had in the plan, and we were asked to consider that for a plan that would be totally cohesive, that we could make everything match and, again, strengthen the identity of the community. It's never the intent. First of all, I'd like to clarify also that what you see on the PUD sign plan are conceptual only, and they're not advertising who will go on the sign. There are a couple of things that have to happen to get on those signs. The Metro District totally controls the sign on Longs Peak, and so that particular sign would be actually the Metro District, but it was never the intention of the applicant in this case to preclude anyone that's on there now from being on there in the future. It was only for enhancing that visibility on 85 for those shops where your shop is and the location of the shops interior to the site, but bring it together with common bases and a common look. And also add the community board for the purpose of the school and the community center so that messaging and community interest could be, that sign would be used for that purpose. So, even though, I can't stand here on behalf of the Metro District and say exactly who's going to be on the sign and how they'll decide or when they'll put it up. But what we have done is given them the opportunity. The district did tell me that the sign that Ms. Claiborne was talking about was temporary only, and that was the condition of the approval by the board of the Metro District. So beyond that, I really couldn't comment as far as the contents of the sign. But it was never the intent to preclude anyone that's on there now from being on there in the future, because that really is the Metro District sign, that particular one. Long term, it is the hope that the Metro District would be maintaining all of the signs out there, and that would be the hope and the intent. But my understanding is that the developer and the owner of the undeveloped property would be funding the southern signs, and that would be negotiated and ultimately given over to the Metro District to maintain. So as far as your sign goes, it's not the intent to remove anybody from the signs. That's not our intent. And it would all have to be permitted. And also, in order to get on any of the signage that's approved in Bell Creek, has to go through the Bell Creek Design Review Committee, the DRC, which I'm sure you had to do the first time. And anyone else that goes on the sign also has to do that, both fascia signage as well as monumentation signage. The only two signs that would be strictly approved by the city would be the two subdivision signs, which is purely for the reason of advertising that you have now arrived at Bell Creek and the north and the south. Other than that, it requires DRC approval and sign permitting through the city.
Okay, thank you. So I guess my advice would be to please work with your Metro District and make sure that you go and explain how important it is to you, to the Metro District, because ultimately what goes on the sign is determined by the Metro District and the DRC, not by the city. We only are approving the size and shapes of the signs that are being requested, not the content.
Okay, and I just want to clarify that did you just mention that the cost would be covered by the builder and not the retail space owners?
The signs on the south is what she had said the owners were participating in. I don't know the Metro District's business, but I think it would be appropriate for you to contact the Metro District and find out and ask those questions. Those aren't questions that we all have concerns with on who's paying for what. We are making sure that what's approved is followed by our guidelines within the PUD. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify during this public hearing? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. What are the desires of the council? Mr. McEldowney?
Would move to accept the facts and findings of the Planning Commission on matter Z 717-00-13.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock?
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to accept the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now we'll handle the ordinance. Mr. McEldowney?
Would move to approve ordinance Z 717-00-13.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock?
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance Z-717-00-13. Mr. Attorney, please read the title.
Okay, now I am reading the title to the ordinance as it's presented to the council in the corrected form, so it's not the one that's on the screen there. An ordinance approving the First Amendment to the Bell Creek PUD zone document.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that it is approved on first reading or introduced 9-0 unanimously by the council this evening. Next item on the agenda, we start into resolutions. We have Resolution 2013-14. Any council members have any questions concerning this resolution? Mr. Bullock?
I was going to introduce it.
Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this resolution? Seeing no one, Mr. Bullock.
Move to introduce Resolution 2013-14.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to introduce Resolution 2013-14, and it's not an introduction, it's an approval.
Approve.
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
It's approval.
Resolution 2013.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Attorney, please read the title.
Title reads, Resolution Approving Business and Development Incentives for Rush Truck Centers of Colorado, Inc.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Move on to Resolution 2013-19. Council have any questions regarding this resolution? Mr. Bullock?
Move to approve Resolution 2013-19.
Thank you. Councilwoman Carson?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing no one, Mr. Attorney, please read the title.
Title reads, Resolution Approving Documents Related to the Inclusion into the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District of the city-owned Victory Crossing property.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. We go to ordinances on first reading. We have ordinance 1948. Does anyone on council have any questions regarding this ordinance? Mr. Bullock?
Move to introduce Ordinance 1948 on first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Amador?
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one? Mr. Attorney, please read the title.
Title reads, An Ordinance Amending Sections 21-5249 and 21-11200 of the Land Development Code of the City of Commerce City for the purpose of regulating the location of medical marijuana businesses and primary caregivers.
Thank you. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show that the introduction of Ordinance 1948 is passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda is some presentations. Mr. McBroom, you want to outline the process of how the next four items will be presented to council?
Thank you, Mayor Ford. We have the first of a series of presentations for City Council that is follow-up work to City Council's retreat the first weekend in February. We had shared with City Council in a City Manager report a couple of weeks ago our method for bringing the information forward and then giving City Council an opportunity to discuss the different subject areas leading out of the retreat back in February. But I wanted to just review the schedule with you, and we'll do this at the beginning of each set of presentations at each regular meeting as just kind of a reset to where we are in the schedule and indicate kind of where we are in the overall process of presenting information back to Council, giving Council an opportunity to discuss these issues so that in the May or June timeframe, City Council can be in a position to make decisions about how they'd like to move forward with some of these subjects. The basic plan is to make presentations at the regular meetings the first and third Monday of the month, tonight being the first regular meeting, which is the third meeting in March. We will be making presentations to Council at the first and third regular meetings in April, and then the study session immediately following the presentations at the regular meeting. We've structured those agendas to give City Council an opportunity to discuss the presentations, ask questions, start to formulate positions on the different subjects that we will be presenting to Council. And the subject matter that's being presented to Council is broken down versions of QCI's original recommendations that were made in January, along with the initial discussion that City Council had on February 1st and 2nd. So again, the first and third meetings, which are regular meetings, will be presentations. We'll also be asking you at the end of each presentation if there's additional information you would like prior to having a discussion at the following week's study session. And then we are structuring those study session agendas to take up the subjects that were presented the week prior. The schedule, tonight you will be hearing presentations on an initial preliminary public outreach plan. You'll be hearing about transportation project analysis for Tower Road and 88th Avenue and Rosemary, and some preliminary revenue analysis based on the revenue generation ideas that City Council discussed on February 2nd. Next week at the study session will be your opportunity to discuss these subjects along with any additional information that you might ask us to present to you. Again, the concept is to present at the regular meetings so that we don't have to take up time at the study sessions making presentations to you. When you sit down at the study sessions on the second and fourth meetings of the month, you'll be ready to discuss these subjects. So tonight, those subjects, study session on these subjects next Monday. April 1st, an initial presentation on revenue options for park and recreation projects, and then again an opportunity on April 8th to discuss the information presented on April 1st. April 15th, we'll be discussing parks and recreation projects that were discussed by Council initially February 2nd. It's possible we may be doing some of these April 1st, but the schedule as of right now is to present this information initially on April 15th, give City Council an opportunity to discuss park and recreation projects on April 22nd. Then the first two meetings in May, the regular meeting on May 6th and the study session on May 13th, is City Council's first opportunity to begin formulating some initial thoughts about where you might like to go with both the list of projects and a list of possible sources of revenue. And that timeline was based on discussion we had back in February about the need to begin to formulate where you might want to go, particularly with ballot initiatives early enough in the year to allow us to do some polling out in the community and allow some additional community education of any ballot initiatives that City Council might be looking at later in the year. The actual deadline to place language on the ballot is until August, but there was a recognition back in February that if City Council is going to seriously pursue that, you want to know early enough in the year to give us an opportunity to test some of these ideas out in the community, and then likewise give Council and staff an opportunity to explain to the community what Council is thinking of doing. The future long-range schedule, as I mentioned, any ballot language City Council might be considering would have to be finalized in August. Then between August and the date of the election, City Council is able to do public outreach but cannot do campaigning at that point. And then Election Day this year is on November 5th. So we will continue to present this at the regular meetings, just as kind of a reset to where we are in terms of presenting the information. And as always, as we're making presentations during the regular meetings, we're very much interested in any additional information that might be helpful to you in arriving at some decisions, perhaps sometime in the month of May. So any questions before we proceed tonight with the first presentation?
Nope, go right ahead.
This is a graphic look at that schedule. We'll keep showing that again as we make presentations so you can see the progress that we're making as we move through these presentations. But with that, I will turn it over. I'm sorry, there's one question.
Yes, Mr. McEldowney.
Just one quick question. The slides are a little different than the ones that we had in our agenda. Are we going to get a copy of the updated content here? This is a little bit more detailed than what we had in terms of the preliminary outreach plan in the agenda, or was this set up a little different?
This was just set up to be some introductory slides before we make each of the presentations. The four presentations we're going to make tonight should be those that are included in the packet, but we can absolutely send these kind of broader picture schedule slides out to you as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And the first presentation tonight is a preliminary look at a public outreach plan. So I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. So in terms of public outreach and education, there's really three components that we talked about during the Council retreat. And so the project, for lack of a better word, is really to educate the community about the city's needs and funding limitations. We want to make sure we're telling people what the challenges are of the city, building on the QCI work, and also what City Council is doing to address. The other aspect of public education and outreach is to understand the appetite among all the different audiences in the city for the policy initiatives that you're considering and the policy alternatives that you're considering. And then finally, there's a public education campaign about the specific solutions and alternatives as you start to narrow this down. So Brian's presentation did a great job of kind of talking about, this is a funnel process, and we're trying to get towards more specifics at the end of the day, so we can have a good conversation with the community and also understand and get their feedback. So in terms of the schedule for this project, ongoing is public awareness about the city needs, about the funding constraints, and about the goals and objectives that you want to achieve. During April and June, as you're starting to make some narrowing of your decisions in terms of both projects and revenue options, we'll want to do focus groups and do some survey data on those narrowed policy options to really provide you with some quantitative feedback. And then we'll want to do some qualitative feedback as well through that June, August, early September timeframe before you finalize and make any final recommendations. So in any type of public education campaign, there's pros and cons. Some of the pros of doing this are certainly you're keeping the community needs and the work of QCI front and center, but this could also just be a lot of boring background noise. It's a lot of, it starts to sound like Charlie Brown's teacher after a while in terms of all the needs that we have and the wants. The other thing is a pro is making sure that we're having a very transparent and open dialogue on the options you're considering. That's really important. You articulated that during the retreat. The con, or the challenge with that rather, is that you're not going to have very specific. So you're going to be all over the board potentially on, is it this, or is it that, or is it this, or is it that? So there could be a lot of misinformation out there about what you're considering or how much you're considering or what's it going to be. So that's something to take into account when we're thinking about the message we want to communicate and the information you want to convey. A good thing about doing public education and outreach campaigns is that you're able to make data-driven decisions, not only from a qualitative perspective through focus groups and through conversations with HOAs and neighbors, but also the quantitative data through the survey. The con, or the caution rather, is that we need to make sure that we're very sensitive to the ballot issues and election rules, and I know that our city attorney and our city clerk will keep us on that task, making sure that city staff is doing what they can do within the limitations, then providing you all with guidance down the road as to what you can do as elected officials should you pursue those options. So when we talk about building an outreach plan, you really do want to focus on the message. And based on the retreat that you had in February, we really talked a lot about wanting to honor the historical work that council and the city has done over the last several years, from the comprehensive plan to the economic development plan to the QCI work. We wanted to make sure that we honored all of the work to date, as well as the dialogue you had during the retreat. And what we tried to do is try to find a simple message that allowed us to articulate how and why you could achieve the city's vision. And so when we boiled it down, we talked about that achieving the city's vision of a quality community for a lifetime means that our message for these projects and these investments needs to be about building a better community or building a better Commerce City. And the reason for that, the why around why we want to build a better community and achieve that vision, is that our population continues to grow and diversify, that we want to meet the needs of this growth and maintain what we have, and then it takes the entire city, residents, businesses, and visitors to achieve the vision that you've set. In building on that message, building a better community or building a better Commerce City means investing in projects that connect our community. We're investing in our future. We're improving roadway connections and providing parks and recreation experiences for residents of all ages. And it means not being satisfied with the status quo. We want to be a better place. When we talk about the message, it also allows us to talk about the shared financial responsibility we have to advance those projects. Some of the funding revenues you're looking at and the policy options spread the pain or spread the wealth along a variety of audiences. So we want to make sure that in order to build a better community, we do need to have a shared financial responsibility. We also need to make sure we're demonstrating efficient government practices and leveraging taxpayer dollars for the best use. And we also need to communicate without action what happens. And those are some of the things that we will need to talk about during our study session next week, so we can really flush out this message and add some more meat to the conversation. So with that message as a foundational starting point, we would be using the existing communication tools we have to share that message and provide examples. The newsletter, we're meeting with homeowners associations on a monthly basis. We have social media and earned media opportunities. As we get specific policy items advancing from your council and your recommendations, we would start to further refine those messages and then seek more opportunities. So be that the neighborhood outreaches, as you go through that process, be that meetings, individual meetings you'd like to have. And we can talk more about the tools, but really the focus should be on the message and the story that we're telling, because that's really the most important thing that we'd like to get to. But eventually we'll have to refine that message and seek input as we go along. So as we mentioned during the retreat, we are going to need some consultants in terms of public affair firms to help us do some of the concept testing and surveying, both focus groups and some telephone polling. We'll also need them to help us with some of the public education campaigns. So we've asked several public affairs firms for some proposals and pricing based on your direction during the retreat, and we're reviewing those now, and we hope to make a decision in the near future. So our next steps is, again, on the 25th next week, we'll have a study session to discuss and obtain direction on the overall message and conversation you'd like to have. So really thinking about that message and fleshing that out more. Is that the right approach? Is there more that you want to tell to the story? And then certainly we can go through the wealth of tools at our disposal to share that information, but really focusing on the information you want to convey, especially when you're talking about these broad concepts over the next couple months. We also hope in April to select our consultant and get them going so they can be a resource as you go through the revenue and the project refinement. So with that, I'll open it up to ask you what additional information you need prior to the study session so we can prepare that for you and have a very robust discussion next week.
I think it's going to be difficult to answer the question until we have maybe some of the other presentations. Obviously, the concept of the plan makes perfect sense in terms of the progression, and obviously bringing in the support from a messaging and surveying perspective. I think what may make sense is if we could maybe at the close of the presentations come back and give some thoughts on what additional, or maybe along the way, obviously, that we might need.
Thank you.
Have any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, Steve?
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. I'd like to know, because we've had past consultants here in Commerce City over numerous issues, and basically how to move our city forward, and a lot have touched on these topics. Is there any way to get some of those data that have been collected to see if this could help facilitate this in a way where it kind of not to speed things up, but maybe that would help the consultant coming in, because there's been different layers on a lot on the same subject, and what has been the ultimate outcome from those surveys. That would help, because I've been on several committees where they've had consultants come in, and some have been really good and give great direction where the city needs to go. But is there any kind of feedback we could have as council to look at that data going forward that would support what we're doing?
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilman Douglas, I expect that the polling and the public education consultant will build on the survey data that QCI did. The challenge with the QCI data in terms of you all making decisions on specific ballot measures or specific funding streams is that it's very it's preference data. So we know the preferences of folks, but what we really need to understand is someone willing to support an X% increase to get a Y project? That's the data we simply don't have. So that's really why it's important as you refine your policy options in that by that May timeframe, that then we can test on that and provide you with much more detailed data to make an ultimate decision. So they will certainly build on the work that's been done to date, but they're going to be really looking at a very specific options to provide you with the best analysis and advice of how to move forward and be successful.
Okay, thanks.
In adding on that, I had a detailed discussion with Michael Hancock with their debrucing and the consultants they used and what was their message, who was their messenger, and how they had such an overall percentage of the whole city of Denver wanting this to go forward. Now, this isn't what we're doing. Debrucing is one thing because you're just getting to keep the revenue instead of asking the citizens to add to the revenue by tax or fee or something. But he led me in the way of a consultant that they use that has never lost an election. He says on everything he's ever consulted on, he's got 100% winning projects. And he also said that, it's not just our message, it's our messenger too. We are secondary messengers, but we're going to have to put a primary messenger out there to push forward the message if this is what we want to put forward on the ballot issue in November. But in my asking him these questions, my whole idea was, when you move forward with this, how do you make sure that you're going forward with the message that is going to win? And his whole message to me, which basically was in Michelle's presentation, is you're building a city that it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with your children and your children's children, because if you want it to be great in the long run, you aren't worried about how it's going to affect you. You're worried how it's going to affect the future. And that's how you build great cities. And that's what basically, that's the message, if we decide to go forward, that we want to project. So, I think I'm understanding the question you were asking as far as consultants were you asking, is it worth it, or do we have the information and can we just recycle it?
No, I understand the message that we're trying to send here. I'm saying in the past, there has been several things discussed. As far as getting information from our residents, as far as where they want to see our city in the future, based on what they want to add to it. And we can't go forward if we don't receive any funds. And how projects are going to be funded is going to take a lot collaboration from the city and the residents to move forward as far as people paying for what they get. So basically, if we don't have that kind of input and we don't hit it all on all cylinders, and the message isn't sent out correctly, miss an opportunity. So I do understand the need for consultants, but I'm just asking, has there been, I know there's been prior consultants coming in with the same kind of vision of what the city needs, and it's not in our budget. We have to go outside of our budget and look at other alternatives for revenue, and that's to get our residents on board. If they want to see a better city being built, it's going to take the residents' input and some money to fund our project. So I understand all that. I'm just asking, with all the consultants we have had in prior years, is there any data? Because it's, I mean, yes, we have grown, but I just wanted to see those consultants as far as their final data. Has any of those hit on what we're talking about today?
Mr. McEldowney.
I appreciate Councilman Douglas's concerns regarding selection of and extracting the greatest value from the consultants that we work with. And certainly, as we heard from Ms. Halstead, the work of our past professionals that have been engaged to support, whether it's the transportation strategic plan, the ED strategic plan, the comp plan itself, the data that's been assembled through each of those efforts is certainly provides the basis of the discussions that we've had in the study sessions to this point, our retreat to this point. But I think the key here is that there is a very specific practice area that's needed for the area of expertise that we need to carry us from what we have now, right? Regardless of whether certain of our consultants in the past have been all that we had hoped that they would be. We are where we are at this moment. We have amassed considerable information through discussion, through research, through analysis, and now it's a matter of determining with the help of some specific experts what is the community willing to step up to, and how do we help tell that story. We certainly get it, but we know whether it's a school issue or a municipal issue, it is a difficult job to help break down these complex concepts into a manner that we can talk about them with the community in a very simple manner, that we can get to the heart of what each of these are, what the benefits are, what the costs are, and what we're asking for the community to do. And so I think, again, the point taken on the consultancy, I think staff is very clear on how important it is that we select great consultants and that we get a great product from them. And I think that's really at the heart of this. So thank you.
Seeing no one else, go ahead and continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next presentation is from our folks in Public Works. We're going to present on two projects. The first is the project that we agreed to combine at the retreat, which is 88th Avenue and Rosemary Street. So it looks like Glenn is going to walk us through that presentation first, and then following that, I assume it's Glenn that's going to walk through Tower Road as well.
Good evening.
No. Push the button.
Okay. Again, good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. As Brian indicated, I'm here to talk about two projects. The first one will be the 88th Avenue and Rosemary Street corridors, combining those into two projects. As it relates to the scheduling, touched on a little earlier, the immediate schedule will be to talk next week about these projects in a little more detail, answer any additional questions that you may have. And then as we move forward, assuming the project and funding gets approved, this kind of gives you an outline of the timeline it will take to complete this project. Design would take 18 months to 24 months to complete, and construction would then also take an additional 2 years to proceed. A summary of the the Rosemary Street project. This project would cost approximately $5 million. We would widen it from the 80th Avenue to 88th Avenue. We would widen it to a major roadway collector, major collector roadway cross-section, which I will provide you a detail on that later in the presentation. That section has an 80-foot right-of-way with roadway width of 52 feet from curb to curb, which would allow either 4 lanes of through traffic or 3 lanes of traffic with a center lane for turns and bike lanes on the side. So as we go through design, we would determine which would be the most appropriate for the corridor. It would be constructed in asphalt, have curb gutter sidewalk, include the necessary drainage requirements. We would also install streetlights for safety, improve and upgrade the traffic signal at the intersection of 88th Avenue, and convert any of the overhead lines to underground. The 88th Avenue portion of the project would be widened from Rosemary Street to the I-76 ramps that are west of the east of the interstate. This would be a minor arterial roadway section, which would be 4 lanes of asphalt and median curb gutter sidewalk. Particular improvements that would be needed on this project would be to construct an overpass over the railroad crossing, and as well as reconstruct the structures over the O'Brien Canal. Depending on the improvements that are made on the overpass, it may be included in the overpass, or it would be just box culverts over the canal based on the amount of distance needed to get back to the existing roadway. I think I already touched on some of the improvements. We would include drainage, street lighting. This would be a median that would be landscaped. And again, we would have the overhead converted to underground for utilities. The next couple slides should be a summary of what was discussed at the retreat. So the pros that you guys have identified for these projects are that the projects would increase traffic flow for business and the community. It would provide better flow for the flea market. It would increase opportunity in the area for development, which would help inspire more infill in the area. It would provide a catalyst potentially for economic development of the Victory Crossing area, which actually would be in the vicinity of Highway 2 in Quebec. As it relates to development, it would increase the number of employees. It would provide a big bang for our buck on the improvements with the significant safety and congestion that would be dealt with, and it would also improve commuter traffic. A couple cons that you had identified were that there is a potential for a connector railroad between the UP and the BN, and the location of that is unknown, and actually the timing of that as well is unknown. So that's a factor we would need to look into and consider as we do the design. And improving our roadways gives the impression that CDOT will kind of not have a high priority on their roadways in the area, and in this case would be Highway 2. They would not have a desire to focus as much on that roadway. Some additional information you had requested as part of your retreat for staff to consider. Some of these I can touch on. Some of them are being developed, and we can have more information next week. A timeline, as I indicated previously, if we were to start today, we could potentially have constructed the roadways in 4 years, so it is a pretty lengthy process. Funding for the projects would have to be identified, and you'll hear more from Mr. Tinklenberg this evening on the different funding elements that have been identified through QCI. Communication, how do we get out to the public and those most impacted, which would be the residents and business owners? How are we going to communicate to them as to what this project is, the impacts to them, and the benefits to them? Cost and funding, again, touched on that. Where will traffic go while being constructed, and what to do with traffic? That obviously is going to be a big concern considering the time frame to construct the roadway, and would definitely need to be analyzed in pretty decent detail as we go through the design, so we can come up with some construction phasing itself. Not in the best interest of city or the residents to close the roadway down for the entire time frame, but obviously we would not be able to construct some of these improvements without closing the road. So we would have detours that would be set up to direct traffic to other high traveled roadways. And these would be determined through the design and planning of the project. Are there any models of approaching as independent projects or as a joint project? You can certainly construct each of the corridors independently of one another, but you can also combine them, and even within a corridor we can break those down into phases. So there are different avenues for us to take to minimize the impacts to the traveling public and to potentially save on any costs. Is there an economic development estimate for impact on the corridor and peripheral benefit? That is an unknown at this time, but something that we can be looking into and develop, and hopefully have more information next week. And then timeline, if we started, again, I touched on that earlier. This just shows a general overview of the project area. On the top of the aerial is 88th Avenue, and then on the right-hand side is Rosemary Street. Obviously, at this scale, it doesn't give you a whole lot of detail, but it does identify the improvement locations. This shows 88th Avenue. On the left-hand side is the intersection at Highway 2, and then on the right-hand side would be the intersection at 88th Avenue. And you'll notice that that intersection has a much different configuration than the T intersection that's there today, but this is one concept that we could be looking into. As I indicated, the cross-section that will be constructed is an 80-foot right-of-way with the lane configuration as shown here. And the aerial just shows the existing improvements at 81st and Rosemary, and then the extension of those improvements to the north. For 88th Avenue, the improvements, as I indicated, would be from I-76 to Rosemary. We would widen that to 4 lanes, tie into the on-ramps, on and off ramps at I-76. We would build an overpass over the railroad tracks. We would be required to construct an access road to the andesite property on the north side that's in between the canal and the railroad tracks, and that would be tied in with the overpass, so there would be likely a roadway under the overpass to access those properties. And then again, it shows the intersection at Rosemary Street. This cross-section is a minor arterial, so it would be 4 lanes of traffic with a landscape median, curb gutter, sidewalk. And then the aerial shows a larger view of the intersection, a potential reconfiguration at 88th and Rosemary. And And the idea behind that configuration there is a majority of the traffic is east to south and north to west. And so curving it in that manner gives the priority to those movements. And so we would reduce the potential for backups on Rosemary and or 88th Avenue by doing that. Some of the things that staff has analyzed for the project deal with cost, looking at potential ways to reduce costs if funding became tight. For Rosemary Street, as he indicated, the typical cross-section would be $5 million. If we were to take off the sidewalks, we can reduce that down to $4.6 million. We did the same sort of thing for 88th Avenue. Typical cross-section would be $44.8 million for the fully built landscaped cross-section. If we were to take off the sidewalks, we can get that down to $44 million. If we were to just eliminate the landscaping, it would get it to 43.6, and if we took out both of those elements, we would drop that cost down to 42.9 million. Looking at a couple options for phasing, we didn't feel that there would be a potential or a possibility to phase Rosemary since it's a straight corridor, and to minimize the impacts to those surrounding areas, we would just construct that as one project. 88th Avenue, although it could be constructed in at least two phases, we can build the grade separation and Rosemary Street at the same time, since the significant grade differences that is needed would actually take grade changes down to Rosemary, so we would build those at the same time, and then the next phase would come in and tie it into the I-76 ramps. Staff has also come up with our own pros and cons for the project. As part of the previous enclave discussions that took place in years past, corridor improvements were on the list of high priority for businesses in the area, making improvements to the roadways they use with the tax money that we collect from them. Another pro would be that this would obviously increase traffic safety and improve the travel time with the elimination of the interaction of the railroad crossing. And then the reconfiguration of the intersection at 88th and Rosemary could also increase or reduce congestion. A couple of the cons, as it relates also to the enclave discussions, this may not particularly be the higher priority for those businesses. For instance, they may feel that 96th Avenue would be a top priority, but it's something that I consider. And then also, with any roadway widening project, we do have to deal with land acquisition, and especially on Rosemary Street, the right-of-way does vary quite a bit, and there is the potential that we would have to acquire entire parcels and demo houses. But there are opportunities for us to be creative so that we don't do that, but that is a possibility that we would have to consider. As it relates to consultants and what we would need to move this project forward, we've developed a pretty efficient model through our experience with 104th Avenue of hiring a project or a program management firm where they would manage the design, any land acquisition. They've worked, or they can work with the utility companies, FRICO, for instance, to obtain any agreements, help us work with the railroad and the PUC on any of the discussions and approvals we need there. They would also be involved with the design or the construction and have complete oversight, which includes testing and surveying for the constructions of the projects. So in summary, I don't know if I need to go into great detail on this slide since it's only been a minute or two since I just talked about these, but this does talk about some of the staff analysis of different alternatives for costs, and it also includes the timeline for us to get this project designed and constructed. Our next steps, assuming that funding is something that will be approved, prior to that we could make an outreach to the business owners, the residents, to inform them of the potential project, the impacts that they will encounter and the benefits to them, to try to garner any support for the project. And then once funding is approved, we would then move swiftly to draft and develop a scope of work for our program manager and get that out and advertised. And we believe that that process would take 3 to 5 months to get that going. At this time, I know that was a lot of information, but I open it up for council to give us any more ideas that you'd like to hear information on so that we can put some information together for next week's study session.
Any council members have any additional information they'd like? Mr. Amador.
Maybe if staff could bring to the table approximately how many residences would be affected and businesses by the widening of the Rosemary and 88th. That way we have an idea of what we're kind of looking at.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Okay, Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. On the analysis where we were looking at with sidewalks, without sidewalks, with landscaping, without landscaping, one of the things I think we need to consider is, or not remove from the consideration, is that multimodal transportation option. So to me, removing sidewalks into our bike lanes is not viable, particularly with the ability for, whether it's residents or otherwise, to commute to work without a car through those same corridors. And so I guess what I would look at is, rather than the black and white analysis, are there creative ways to maybe leverage an oversized sidewalk/trail component, much like the 104th component, where maybe we do a one side of the roadway that gets an oversized corridor that functions as sidewalk and trail, ensuring that we've got proper crossings through the corridor. But would that allow us to maximize the roadway segment itself for traffic and turning? Because I think, obviously, if we were to enhance the roadway and only have a single lane in either direction at the cost of bike lanes, that's not viable, especially in an industrial area. But potentially maximizing that sidewalk/trail component and still allowing for a single lane plus turn lanes might give us a better flow. But just some of the creative options in terms of how do we ensure that we maintain that multimodal opportunity. The other piece that I would think that we consider in terms of cost savings is in regard to the landscaping. It's funny how you don't pay attention to medians until you get on city council, and certainly we've had our share of median discussions in this town. And well-developed, well-built medians are beautiful. They certainly create a great feel. But at the same time, I look at North Glen, as an example. I had grandparents that lived up off of 104th and Cuevas a million years ago, and the roadway looks identical to the way that it did 25 years ago. And they've got two very functional sides of the road. They've got an open culvert essentially down the middle of the road, and I think it costs a heck of a lot less to do that. I think one of the things that we may consider in order to stretch our dollar is, how do we think about those types of things differently? And maybe it's to our advantage to make the extra investment to put a finished median in there, but it might be helpful when we come back in anticipation of discussions with the community. What is the cost benefit of building out those medians in more of a finished capacity versus leaving them in more of an unfinished capacity? I can just anticipate citizens asking, well, why would you spend all that extra money to put a median through there? And I know that's a question that we got in the 104th corridor when folks understood that part of that median is sacrificial, right? I mean, ultimately, to expand capacity, we would actually take out things that we've built. So it's a question I would just think we want to have an answer to, certainly when we get ready for a citizen discussion, but it would be helpful for us to have in our own discussions if we can. Does that make sense?
Definitely. As it relates to medians, we can look at Quebec Street north of 72nd. That's native grass, that's bare bones, and then we go up to 104th. And I know when we did the design for Quebec, there was a lot of thought in, how should we address those medians, and it changed over time. And eventually, once they were constructed, we came back and added to them. So I think the locale of the roadway will also dictate what kind of median. Maybe 88th Avenue doesn't warrant a 104th style median treatment. But yeah, certainly something that we can look at.
Yeah, and that may be it, right? What are the range of options we might consider, and how dramatically do they impact costs? So,
Right.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, go ahead and continue. You had a question? I didn't see your light on, Steve. Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Ellis. You know, looking at the scene here with no sidewalks, no landscaping and all, I think that would help to have sidewalks because, especially looking at our storm water infrastructure, that's going to help as far as if having the sidewalks there to channel the water that from rain or whatever. The other thing, is it going to be porous asphalt?
For the
For 88th, as far as the widening and resurfacing and...
Yeah, it would just be normal, regular asphalt. So yeah, there would be some infiltration, but not like concrete.
Okay, is there a way to look at that, to have more of a green asphalt built instead of just a regular asphalt?
That could be something that we could look at. I know that it's not within the existing standards that the city has for our roadway, asphalt sections, but if it's a desire, that's something that we could potentially look into.
Okay, thank you.
Glenn, on the asphalt sections for 88th Avenue, given the fact that there is quite a bit of truck traffic, what would that be designed to handle that truck traffic, being that it's asphalt?
Yeah, we actually, as part of our geotechnical analysis, we would have the consultant look at asphalt and concrete and give us a recommendation on thicknesses, but they definitely would be designed to carry the amount of traffic that's out there and the potential growth of traffic. It really just comes down to funding. Concrete is going to cost a lot more putting in. And, it's a consideration if you do have a higher percentage of trucks to go with that route with concrete. That's what we did on 96th Avenue at Highway 2. It has a higher percentage of trucks, and so that was helpful in our decision to construct that in concrete.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead and move on.
Okay, so the next project is Tower Road, and some of the elements are going to be the same, so I may go a little faster through there on this presentation, but the scheduling again, we have our study session, and then for the size of the project itself, it's going to have the same impact on our design and construction timeline as the other project. For the Tower Road widening, this would widen from 80th Avenue to about 103rd Avenue. I didn't take it to 104th because there's already a section that was widened as part of the Tower and 104th projects. So it would tie into the existing widening there. This would widen to our principal arterial section, except it'll have 4 lanes as opposed to 6, which we typically have in our build-out of a principal arterial. This would be a concrete roadway. That is the designation we've identified for principal arterials in the city. That's 104th is a principal, and so we've constructed it in concrete. Again, it would have curb gutter, sidewalk, drainage. We would need to construct a bridge over Second Creek, similar to the one on 104th, maybe scaled down a bit. We would include street lighting. We would construct new traffic signals or upgraded signals at the existing signal locations. Again, convert our overhead utilities to underground and install median landscaping. So to kind of give you a visual, this would look like 104th Avenue with all of the exact elements of it. Again, some of the pros and cons that were identified from you during your council retreat. Pros would be, this would encourage economic development in the corridor. It would improve community balance. It would bring in funds through economic development. It would increase the quality of life through mobility and not getting stuck. If you've been on Tower Road, you know that backups are a very daily occurrence because it's over capacity. The 2 lanes cannot handle the amount of traffic any longer. The project would decrease that congestion. Funding sources have been identified in the way of GIDs as a potential funding source. The project would improve the community perception by meeting the needs to move traffic in and out efficiently through the city. There is community support for this, as we found in the QCI meetings that were held, and this would also improve the community image. A couple cons. This would increase development. Typically, when you make roadway widening improvements, that spurs on development. As we saw on 104th, that was a catalyst for some of the development that took place, commercial development. This would have a huge cost. It is a 3-mile section, but it's upwards in the vicinity of $50 million, and this would attract more traffic. The thought is that with it being over capacity and the congestion currently, the traffic is going somewhere else, potentially 470, and if you widen the roadway, it'll come back to Tower Road. Again, additional information that you had desired through your council retreat discussions. What is the return on investment in the cost? This is something we don't have currently, but we will be developing and have more information next week for you. What is the existing plan for development in the area? Following the comp plan, the corridor would be shown as mixed-use, commercial, residential on the outskirts of that. So it would be a higher density commercial. Education, how do we educate the public on the need for this project and the impacts? We would be utilizing the city's public outreach campaign to do that. Clearly define the role of the Northern General Infrastructure District and the city in funding versus the new GID. There are several different ways that this could be done. You can solely tax the Northern Infrastructure District 100% if you wanted. May not seem fair. You can also tax the E470 commercial GID if you'd like, but again, that wouldn't be fair. So some sort of a split would be most appropriate. And how do you determine that split? One potential way is to look at the traffic. Where is the traffic coming from? Is it coming from the Northern General Improvement District more? How much is regional, and coming up with those splits. So something that we will be looking into as it relates to that. Estimate of timing, again, it would be a four-year project starting today if we were to get started. So it is pretty lengthy, considering the improvements are really needed today. Build an economic development estimate of potential impact. Again, something that we will be developing and hopefully have more information next week for further discussion. Alternative funding sources. In addition to GIDs, there's the potential that we can go out and try to obtain federal funds. We haven't been very successful in the past of doing that, but it is a potential funding source. Location needs and education and time frame, again, touched on previously. This is just a general overview of Tower Road. On the left-hand side is 103rd Avenue, and on the right-hand side is 80th Avenue. A three-mile section of Tower Road would be improved with this project. This is the cross-section of a principal arterial scaled down to 4 lanes with no landscaping. So it would be constructed with an extra wide median for the potential for extra widening in the future. It would include the 6-foot sidewalk and a 12-foot bike path on one side. As part of our cost analysis, we looked at, what are some of the elements we could take out today to reduce the cost. For a full-blown 104th type cross-section, the cost would be $58.5 million. If we were to eliminate the sidewalk, that would drop it down to $55.8 million. Again, if you pulled out just the landscaping, that would reduce the cost to $53.6, and then if you pulled out both elements, it would get down to $50.9 million. And then phasing, this can definitely be phased just because of the amount of traffic in the different areas. Assuming 96th Avenue does get extended in the near future, the first phase would be constructed from 80th to 96th to complete that connection. And then we can then go in and construct 96 to 104th. If 96 is not completed for some reason, we would change that to to maybe down to 80th to 88th, since that's the primary route for a lot of the traffic today. Staff has also determined some additional pros and cons. This one's a given that this project would significantly improve capacity, safety, and reduce the congestion. That's a no-brainer, but just wanted to signify that there is a lot of that congestion is due to that road is just not able to manage all that traffic. And then we would also have the ability to manage that traffic through our traffic signals. We would be able to coordinate them and communicate with them. Today, we do not have that option. If we did, we could be able to manage that traffic a little better. And then it would also tie in with another key corridor that has been constructed in a very similar manner, and that's 104th Avenue. Just a couple cons on this is the long construction window. Not just for this project, but for the north in general. 104th Avenue has been under construction for many years, and this would just add another impact to the motorists in that area throughout that period. Again, we would follow the same 104th Avenue model for program management, where we would hire a consultant to manage the design, acquisition of land, and the construction elements. A summary of the project is it's Tower Road from 80th to 103rd Avenue, the different elements that can be taken out to generate different costs, and the timeline of 4 years to get us to construction. Next steps, again, mirroring what is needed for 88th and Rosemary. We would do some public outreach prior to funding being approved, and then once funding would be approved, we would move to hire that program managing firm to get us started so that we can get this roadway constructed as quickly as possible. At this time, I turn it over again to council for any additional information you'd like to see.
Mr. McEldowney?
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Again, a couple quick questions. Similar to my last comments on Rosemary and 88th in terms of the breakdown on cost. The option without landscaping, can we read that as no median, or is that an unlandscaped median, more like we see on 96th, where it's cement?
Yeah, we can definitely present it. This would be a fully landscaped like 104th. We could go the route of landscaping or the hardscape median like you see on 96. In terms of cost, there may not be that much of an improvements just because of the hardscape and stamped and colored concrete is going to be pricey anyway.
Right.
The decision there had to do a lot with maintenance, trying to keep maintenance of that median down.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I guess carry forward the concepts in terms of cost. I mean, I look at the continuity of that corridor. If we look at how it looks into the Denver segment and how it's looked in terms of the Denver/Aurora segment, they focused on capacity, not on aesthetics. So just to help us understand what the cost breakdown might be if we were to make similar decisions. With regard to the impact, because there is not a lot of cross-traffic on that, are there opportunities to lessen that impact by doing the sort of build left half, build right half model, where you essentially build out a pair of lanes in one direction and you essentially move traffic that's using 2 lanes today onto that? So in theory, you wouldn't have a massive hit to traffic.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't have, the daily lane closures and those sort of things. I mean, that's how we did it on 104th, is we did keep 2 lanes open the entire time, can build.
Right.
Just because the widening would be on the outside of the existing lanes.
Okay. And then my last question, I noted on your slide regarding phasing, if I caught that right, it looked like the phased option was actually more expensive.
Correct. There would be elements of tapering for asphalt that would eventually be throwaway. You'd have additional costs for mobilization to bring contractors out multiple times, those sort of things. So that's why it'd be a little more expensive.
So in essence, if you stage the progression right, you're still getting a phasing, but you actually don't pay the cost of phasing.
Yeah, you can definitely bid the project where it's the entire corridor and have it lumped in and built in phases, as opposed to actually having different packages to construct it in phases like that.
Okay, that was interesting. I don't know that that had registered to me that you actually pay more to phase it. So, thank you.
Mr. Bullock?
Yes, Ms. Ellis, in this presentation, you didn't talk too much about land acquisition along the Tower Road corridor. Because a lot of it is just open now, what would be the process on that?
Well, we still go through our typical, get appraisals done, meet with the property owners, those required processes. But yeah, there aren't the impacts. You don't have significant improvements that you have to acquire. You don't have the potential for relocating and demoing structures. Some of these properties are in the county, so they may not have annexation agreements. Some have already dedicated property. So yeah, the focus on land acquisition isn't as high as it would be on the Rosemary and trying to integrate and work with those property owners. But we certainly would have an outreach and talk with each of the owners on Tower Road.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Douglas?
Mr. Ellis, on your cross analysis here, I see this, without sidewalk, without landscaping, and this the way it's designed is the same as 104th, correct? As far as the median in the middle and then the traffic lanes. Is there, do you have a cost analysis of what it would take just to have the 6 lanes instead of 4?
Not currently, but we definitely can put that together and have that in our back pocket to discuss next week.
Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney?
Sorry, just to coattail Mr. Douglas's comments on that. I think, I know we've done it in past discussions on roadways. When you build out 4 versus 6, you add additional O&M to the mix. So it wouldn't be just the capital cost of building out the extra 2 lanes, right? We would introduce additional cost from an O&M perspective in terms of maintaining those lane miles from not only a plowing and street sweeping perspective, but that's built roadway that can degrade sooner and then adds to our maintenance efforts as well, right?
Right, yeah, there's our annual maintenance of, like you said, street sweeping, snow plowing, but also our long-term of managing that. There is a trade-off, though, that there would be less median landscaping maintenance that would take place, so there is somewhat of a trade-off. Don't know those costs off the top of my head, though.
I think to Mr. Douglas's point, it would be great to get that, and just to make sure that when we get that, it's not just a capital comparison, but more of a fully loaded cost, at least an estimate in terms of those fully loaded costs. Because I'm just trying to remember from past discussions that logic, and I can hear Mr. Sterling in my ear somehow talking about, again, you build it before you need it, and it actually can cost you more if that's the case. So, okay, thanks.
Seeing no one else, let's go ahead and move on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our final presentation tonight, Mr. Ellis has given us a couple of very good presentations on the projects side of the ledger. The final presentation tonight is some preliminary revenue analysis of the different revenue options that City Council discussed on February 2nd. You had asked us to do some more analysis of some revenue to be generated and some different options in that regard, and Mr. Tinklenberg is here to walk us through his initial analysis.
Okay, go ahead, Roger.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
We'll see if my voice lasts throughout the entire presentation, so if it fails partway through, I've forewarned you. I'm not sure who I'll turn it over to, but at any rate. Same type of schedule in terms of when this information is coming to you, presented for discussion again on the 25th. Then from there, the timeline will depend entirely on direction from Council. If you want to place it on the anything on the November ballot, then I picked these dates kind of out of the air, but it does give you an indication. The measure really should be in place by June 17 in terms of what you want to do. The ballot language has to be set by August 19, and that's from the city clerk's election calendar. The option summaries, or the summary of the options that were recommended by the QCI group, as you recall at the winter retreat, you asked staff to come back with further analysis on these. These are the numbers that were generated at the time for the Quality Community Initiative Task Force, and so that's what they worked with. They had recommended that we look further at impact fees, stormwater utility fee, Parks and Recreation, a new special district, an admissions tax, a head tax, and a sales tax increase. So I'll look at each of these in further detail, but again, the numbers have changed because of additional analysis and updated numbers. So looking first at the impact fees, QCI had recommended doubling the road impact fee to raise $400,000 per year, assuming approximately 200 residential permits per year. That's what we permitted last year in 2012, was 194, so real close. So far this year, in January and February, we issued 49 permits, so obviously we're far ahead of that pace, so that's good news. An option, instead of doubling the road impact fee, would be to simply require the developers to fund the first lane, landscaping, and sidewalk improvements in addition to paying the current road impact fee. Or you could give them the option, if they don't want to do that, because of timing with their project, they could pay double the road impact fee. So they would have the choice of the two. That's an alternate to actually doubling the fee on everyone. The pros of doing this, now I have to admit to you that these pros were developed through staff discussion. Council, if you recall, you had done the pros and cons on the projects, but not on the funding sources. So these do not reflect your thoughts. These are simply ideas that we came up with for your consideration and thought. So the pros in this con, it allows the city to fund more than the current 40% of arterial road construction, because that's all that comes from the current road impact fee. It also doesn't require raising the impact fee. It also makes Commerce City consistent with Aurora, Brighton, and some other communities. It only requires council approval of this funding mechanism. It would not require going to the voters for approval. Some of the cons is that it increases development costs for new development. It does require negotiating the choice of paying that double road impact fee or funding the road improvements construction at the time of the development agreement. In other words, staff would need to sit down with the developer and negotiate which way they're going for each one of these projects. Turning now to the stormwater utility, QCI recommended phasing in stormwater utility fee, and what the fee is intended to do is to fund full compliance with federal law, maintenance of current drainage facilities, and construction of either construction of new or replacement of existing drainage facilities. Setting the fee at $6 per month would raise $3.367 million annually. However, because of the phasing in, you'll see some additional numbers here. This would also free up $850,000 in the general fund, which is currently going towards stormwater maintenance. Some of the pros is that stormwater is currently inadequately funded. It provides needed funding for the operation, maintenance, replacement, and construction of stormwater compliance and facilities. It would make Commerce City consistent with other metro communities, and it only requires council approval of this funding mechanism. Cons, it does increase annual costs for both homes and businesses. It requires billing the fee through the county on the property tax, and this isn't a real good political environment because of what Adams County has found, or their experience, if I could put it that way diplomatically. Turning to the new special district for Parks and Recreation, QCI recommended establishing a new special district to fund the full operation and maintenance of the current facilities and programs and construction of new facilities. Setting the special district's mill levy at 14 mills, and I need to note the presentation that went out to you had a typographical error. It had a dollar sign in front of that 14.8 mills. That dollar sign should not be there. It's just plain 14 mills, 14.8 mills. That would provide revenue of a little over $10 million annually. And what this does is it frees up money in the general fund, which then could be used for capital road maintenance and projects. So some of the pros, it allows construction of new parks and recreation centers sooner than the current situation. It provides needed funding for the operation, maintenance, replacement, and construction of parks and recreation facilities. It ensures consistent funding for parks, open space, trails, and recreation. Some of the cons is that it increases annual costs for both homes and businesses through their property tax. It requires setting up a separate special district. That will require an amendment of the city charter because in the charter it provides for Parks and Recreation as a city department. The special district would also have to have its own elected board of directors, and so it would require an election for both establishing the district and issuing debt, if that were the intent. Electors are also often not receptive to property tax increases, so that's another factor. There are also overlapping districts that already provide some of the Parks and Recreation service. Several of the metro districts provide this service, particularly in the North Range. Turning now to admissions tax, QCI recommended placing an entertainment admissions tax on the ballot. The initial analysis did not include the flea market. This analysis does include it, and if it is set at 8%, then it would provide $1.3 million annually. This does provide money for road capital maintenance or for Parks and Recreation. Some of the pros, it provides funding for capital road projects, provides needed funding for operation maintenance, replacement, construction of Parks and Recreation facilities, and the majority of the revenue would come from visitors to the community. Not all, but a majority would. Some of the cons, it increases the annual cost to attend entertainment venues. It also requires a citizen petition in order to have it apply to the flea market. In other words, it could not be initiated by city council action. It does require an election, a fall election, to place it on the ballot. Turning to the head tax, QCI recommended placing an employment head tax on the ballot. I've done a new analysis based on some updated employment numbers, and the estimate is if it is set at $5 a month, it would provide $1.47 million annually. This would provide money for both roads and Parks and Recreation. Some of the pros, it provides funding for capital road projects. It also provides funding for Parks and Recreation. Much of the revenue would come from employees that live in other communities. Now, it still would apply to employees living in this community, but a significant portion of the employees working here do commute in from other communities. The cons is that it increases annual costs for businesses. Businesses don't like the administrative burden of collecting and remitting the tax, and it requires an election. Sales tax increase, the QCI recommended placing a proposal to increase sales and use tax on the ballot. An updated estimate is that a half a cent increase would provide $5 million annually, and that's based on the 2012 sales and use tax revenues. QCI recommended using that money for road projects. Some of the pros includes it provides funding for capital road projects. It does not require a new collection mechanism, and most of the revenue would come from businesses rather than from residents. Some of the cons, it increases annual costs for businesses, and it does require an election. Some additional information is that we calculated what the impact on a family of four would be for each of these revenue measures, and then I also compared the sales and use tax rate to other cities in the metro area. So the impact on a family of four, that's based on the annual spending by a family of four, and a half a cent increase in sales tax would impact a family of four by $72.50 per year. And if you went a full 1%, obviously it's double that at $145. And admissions tax, if it was at 8%, it would cost them $42.24, assuming that family of four went to 4 soccer games and went to 4 drive-in movie events. The Stormwater utility fee at $2 a month would be $24 a year for a family, and then on up from there. $4 a month is $48, and $6 a month is $72, of course. In comparing our sales tax rate to other cities, you can see the city, Arvada, Aurora. Arvada is at 3.46. Aurora is at 3.75. Broomfield is one of the highest at 4.15, but they also don't have a county tax since it's the city and county of Broomfield. Denver is at 3.62. Federal Heights is at 4. Let's see. Westminster 3.85. Thornton at 3.75. So you can see basically what the competition is. The other interesting thing was, as I was looking this up, I was surprised by the number of cities that do tax food. We're one of 8 in the metro area that I found that don't, and there's 21 that do. Not saying that's a good thing. I didn't think there were that many. Looking at head tax comparison to other cities, I found 4 cities that impose a head tax. Aurora's is based on anyone earning a gross over $250 a month. Theirs is $2 for the employee and $2 for the business for a total of $4. Denver, it's anyone grossing over $500 per month, and the employee pays $5.75 and the business pays $4 for a total of $9.75. Glendale is the highest, but it's also for anyone grossing over $750 a month, and it's $5 for each for a total of $10. Aspen has a different approach. They charge the business based on the number of employees, and so if it's 0 to 5, it's $150, 6 to 15, $200 on up. Also, looking at the property tax, if you increased it by 1 mil, that would impact a $200,000 home $15.92 per year. If you did a special district at full funding for the Parks and Recreation program at 14.8 mils, that would cost $235, almost $236 per year on a $200,000 home. So this gives you a range of, the range of possibilities in terms of if you looked at a property tax increase. I also threw in here a comparison to other metro cities in terms of their property tax rate. The highest one on this group is Glendale at 18.67 mils. Ours is 3.28. I used 2 years because sometimes a city has to do a Tabor recalculation just to provide a refund. We did that in 2010, so that's why ours is a little less in 2010. So I provided both years just to give you a feel of where they normally are at. In this group, Lafayette is the highest at 15.5 mils. I think Lone Tree is the lowest, obviously at 0. The average of all of the cities is 7 mils, and again, we're at 3.28. The maximum was Glendale, as I noted, at 18.67. So next steps in summary, in combination, the QCI recommended new or increased revenues to provide funding for all of the recommended projects. But basically, staff needs council direction on the revenue measures and levels that council is willing to consider further. Then based on that, we can develop more information on the various projects that can be funded by those funding mechanisms. And once that's all done, then scientific polling really needs to occur with the community to see what the community's reaction to all of that is. So in summary, what additional information do you need from us for your discussion?
Mr. Bullock?
Yes, Roger. On a lot of the fees that the QCI recommended, when it came back to council at the retreat, we had a different change of plan. Well, we didn't, but we basically, with the Park and Recreation District, it was one of the things that I think as a council as a whole said that, no, we don't want to do a Park and Recreation District because we don't want to take it out of our hands.
we want to still have the input over what happens with our park and recreation. So that district was one of the things that we definitely, if I remember correctly, as the council said, and if I do remember correctly, the sales tax increase was going to be split between park and recreation and transportation after we took the district off the table. The stormwater impact fee was going to be set at the minimum of $2 per month because $6 was just totally unacceptable with council. And the emission head tax, I don't remember it being at 8%. Does anybody else remember it being at 8%, or was it 4%? I thought it was 5%. Oh, okay, 5%. But it was, you said 5 too? $5. Okay, $5. I knew that we had a 5 in there somewhere. The only one that, and the head tax was $5 too. Because what we wanted to do is, we didn't want to make, what we're trying to do is not make a really strict impact right now. It's like we're easing into this, but it's going to generate the revenue to make it a quality community for a lifetime. And this is just my recollection. I would definitely like to have other council input on what they remember.
Councilwoman Carson?
I was going to speak of the same thing, of the sales tax increase of, not that, but the special district for Parks and Rec. I thought that that was something that council said they didn't want to do. It would take a complete change of the charter, but that we did want to look at either sharing that sales tax increase or having another ballot issue that, I don't remember how we decided we wanted to do that. I just remembered that I thought that we were not going to look at a special district, but we were still going to look at a funding source. So, and I was pretty sure it was with the sales tax increase, but I don't remember if we were going to share that between roads and Parks and Rec, or whether we were going to put another one on the ballot. And then the admission tax, I don't remember us deciding what percentage. I didn't think we did. And then
Mr. Galler?
Just as a point of clarification, the admission tax is a percentage amount. When Councilman Bullock was speaking, were you talking about the head tax being $5?
No, I thought the emission tax was a 5% because putting $5 on a ticket was kind of in excess. I thought it was 5% on a ticket for the the different venues we had, and
you almost have to put a percent on admission tax. Head tax is a different matter, so just clarify that.
Mr. McBroom?
Just to add some clarification to the information Roger presented, we weren't trying to suggest that anything was decided differently than what you may remember. February 2nd, the last day of the retreat, City Council didn't make decisions coming out of the retreat. There was a lot of discussion about a lot of different options. Our direction was to do some more analysis of those various different options. So we're simply just presenting the information back with a little bit of additional staff analysis, particularly comparing these different revenue ideas to what other communities are doing to facilitate a good discussion next week. I do recall definitely that the council wasn't particularly interested in the Park and Recreation District, but we left the property tax increase option on there as a way for the City Council perhaps to go to the ballot and increase the city's property tax mill levy as a funding source for park and recreation projects. So we're not trying to push this in any one direction or another, just lots of additional information to help your discussion next week.
We weren't in a setting to make decisions anyway. All we were to give some guidance towards these particular items to be brought back, and I realize that's what you're doing.
And then, what was my other note? I don't know if we can add, when we're looking at this sales tax comparison, what it would bring in if we did have a food tax like the other cities do. Okay. Trouble? I just want to look.
Do you want that calculation tonight or in the future?
Oh, you can bring it to the study session.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Ticklenberg actually has it. We can share it with you tonight, and we'll include it as part of
Okay.
an abbreviated presentation next Monday.
Okay.
It's $2 million a year?
$2 million?
Yes, ma'am. At the current rate,
And then
3.5%.
I do know that, and I don't know how it happens, the city of Brighton somehow is rebating some of that money back to their residents.
The city of Greeley also does that. I'm familiar with Greeley's, not Brighton's, but Greeley does $45. Let's see. I did know. $45, but it's also income-based, so it's income qualified.
Okay.
Well, it's $45 per person per year.
45 per person
Per year. And it's income qualified.
Okay. And that's how Greeley's doing it?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I don't know how much work it would take you to see if any of the other cities are, like I said, then the reason I knew Brighton was because I think they had a ballot issue just recently that said instead of giving you the rebate this time, would you move your money to, I don't know, maybe it was to build the water park, I don't remember. But, so I do know that they do it, and I don't know how many other cities do this rebate back to the citizens that actually live in the city. If it wouldn't be, if it's a ton of work, it can wait. Okay.
We'll attempt to find it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you. Lots and lots to reflect on, certainly. I think with the Parks and Rec District, I think the one thing that I left recalling from the meeting was that there were certainly questions about the charter and whether or not we could actually do so. And you touched on some of those pieces tonight. I think the other piece that you certainly hit on, but I don't know that we could hit on hard enough, is the fact that we have existing districts that provide similar or same services. And so you'd essentially end up in a position where, should that pass, you'd be radically impacting a subset of the community, charging them double or much more than double for those services. So this is one of those things that I think from a messaging perspective and an outreach perspective, it's one of the quandaries that we have to get citizen input on to figure out, right? I mean, there are certainly needs in terms of Parks and Rec, but how do you solve for it given big pieces of the community already have an outlay, in terms of that extra fee? So I don't know the answer, and maybe there's a need to look at even more creative options in terms of, is there any logic in looking at assembling the metro districts in the city if you were to look at some new Parks and Rec district, do you essentially replace the city and the existing Metro District Park and Rec functions under some new entity where, as opposed to somebody like myself paying, a Metro District allotment and a city allotment, I actually pay one allotment, but we restructure, essentially assembling, it's effectively merging those functions and identifying some economy of scale in terms of a single endeavor. And I certainly know that, a community like Reunion may have resistance to that from a builder perspective. It's a differentiator in terms of the district, but at the same time, you've got a district that's having, and I think all the districts are in the same position, the ability to bring in as much income as they need in order to do the things that they want to do isn't necessarily there. So, I know municipalities talk about sharing services. We certainly do some shared programming with the districts, but, just for grins, as an on-paper exercise, what would that look like? Is there any merit to it? What might be the legal hurdles in terms of doing that? Obviously, people are paying different mill levies today in terms of their metro districts, and what might that have to look like? But again, I think it's just putting all the options on the table to really force some consideration about what the alternatives are. So,
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, Roger. Also remember taking from our retreat that if we do that option on the mill levy, we also lose lottery funds because because you had brought that up. Because if we go that option with the mill levy with the districts, seeing that those funds come in that way, that would take us off the receiving funds from the lottery. And the other thing, as far as food, I think on average, a family of four spends between $3,500 to $4,300 a year on groceries. So get 3%. It's anywhere from $133 to $155 a year added tax. Maybe we should look at like a healthier choice, maybe like a sugar tax for on candy, pop, things that are not healthy, instead of overall food cost. So no, right now we don't have a tax on food, things that are non prepared foods. There are taxes on things that are prepared, of course, but things that you have to prepare yourself, there are no food tax, but maybe looking at a sugar tax. I know Boulder has one. Thanks.
On the, thank you, Roger, by the way. On the admission tax, why would we why could the council initiate the ballot question on everything but the flea market?
There's a provision in their annexation agreement whereby the city agreed to not impose it by council action. So it would. Yeah, it's for 10 years.
Right, but my concern with that is, since there's 5 new council members up here, I have a problem with one council being able to tie the hands of a future council. And I have concerns with that piece of it, because I don't think it's fair for us to impose and to pursue imposition on Dick's and on the movie theater without being able to impose on the flea market. And I don't think that the majority of this council didn't make that decision, and I have some concerns with it, Bob.
I share your concern, but here's the problem. There is a contract right that the flea market has, and one council can't take away a contract right that a citizen has. It's like any other contract that a citizen has with the city. One council can enter into the contract, but a future council can't unilaterally cancel a contract that you as an individual has. It's not like a tax. Like you can impose a tax, city council next year can change it, subject to a vote, of course, with Tabor, but there are certain things that you as a city can do as a city council, and then another city council undo them, such as an ordinance for police purposes or public service, that kind of thing. But when it comes to a contract right, you have to be careful what you take away from a citizen. Like if he has a contract to sell, as an example, product to the city, and city council changes, and that contract is to run for 2 years, say, city council changes the number of council members or who voted for it, city council then can't change that contract until it runs out just by unilateral action. You'd have to have an agreement with the contract holder.
I understand what you're saying, Bob, and I also was here when that all took place. And I guess you probably understand where my feelings are coming from.
Right.
Because there was already a discussion of a seat tax, and this was put into a contract form, which I have concerns about it because it's not the same. To legislate whether a tax can be imposed through contract, I think takes away the rights of future councils differently than, say, a different contract means, a standard contract means. But when we start incorporating, and I know this was already done, I just have to get my 2 cents out on it. I know that this was done back then. When staff and councils allow contract provisions for legislative decisions for the future, I think is crossing the line with binding the hands of future council obligations.
Now,
and I'm just concerned with it, and I said my piece. I know where you stand legally on it. I had a problem when it was done in the past, but it's really hard to go and say, okay, those who have venues that provide entertainment, and we're going to, as a council, pursue treating everybody equally, but we can't fold in a particular user because they were contracted a legislative right for a certain amount of years. By the way, how many years have passed? 3, 2.5?
I think about 3 years.
I would think so as well.
But let me add to this. What Roger is referring to is an ordinance initiated by the city council. It doesn't affect a citizen submitting a petition.
I understand that.
And putting it on the ballot.
But that wasn't an ordinance initiated by the council, because I was here the night it happened, at midnight.
Yeah.
And I'll get off my
So there's a way. There's a way it can be put on the ballot. It's just there's the issue with
I understand
the council
that. I just don't think it was right to do. Councilwoman Carson.
Well, we did stay here till, 3 in the morning, and so I could be wrong, but I do remember I thought it was the largest amount of us that was sitting on this council who agreed and said we would not tie the hands of future council. So I'm a little miffed here because I thought that was something that council was not willing to agree to then, and I thought it was pulled back. I'm trying to remember how the argument was, because I remember being told we either take it all or we take nothing. And I thought it was that change that the majority of council here said, no, we were not willing to tie that, and that it finally did go that way. But there's 3 others sitting here.
I'm quoting what the document says that that the council approved.
I understand that, Bob. Like I said, I'll get off my soapbox. I didn't mean to engage any of the other council members. I just wanted the residents to hear what I had to say about it. I don't think it was the right thing to do.
And I do agree with you, Mr. Mayor, but I think the councilors that are sitting up here probably felt the same way at the time.
I agree. I was here during the meeting. So that kind of complicates how that piece would have to go forward. Correct? Yes, and going over all of it, I am concerned about the stormwater impact fee and especially since we're watching Adams County deal with a scenario that even more complicates that issue. I also stand with my colleagues up here concerned about changing the charter and creating a special district for Parks and Recreation. But
And just to add a complication to what you just said, Mr. Mayor, is that in order to organize a recreation district, the voters who are part of an existing district that provides services are not to be included in the new rec district, which would include Union and
Reunion, Bell Creek.
Well, you name them. I mean, there are numerous ones. Or the district that's providing the services has to waive their right to an exclusive service, which means exactly what was said here earlier. Then the citizens in that district would have a double taxation if it was waived. So that's not likely to happen, that the district would waive it. So it's very unlikely that it would even pass.
I understand that. And I guess the last thing I have to say is that these are suggestions to the public that we will be bringing forward, and if they so choose to make these improvements into our community, my biggest concern is that we stay competitive from an economic development standpoint with the needs that we have for commercial development along 104th, around Victory Crossing, and what we're doing at the dog track, and a new TOD development is supposed to go in at 72nd and Colorado Boulevard, that if we're not competitive, we're going to drive business elsewhere. So we have to stay competitive. It's always been a big concern of mine to stay competitive and make sure that our fees and taxes don't exceed what next door neighbors in Brighton, Aurora, Thornton, whatever it may be, so that we can continue to have a benefit or an edge on development in our community. Thank you for your presentations this evening.
Thank you.
We'll move on the agenda. Administrative council business. I know we have a couple items. I need to request from the council to allow for a special meeting and an executive session to take place Monday night, this upcoming Monday night.
Oh, we already did that.
No, we did not.
You don't have one for the 25th special session?
Special meeting and executive session. Mr. McBroom.
Next week is a study session night starting at 6:30, based on a meeting Mr. Hayes, Mayor Ford, and I had today regarding RTD. We would like to schedule a special meeting next Monday from 5:30 to 6:30 for the purpose of an executive session to discuss negotiations relative to the IGA that we will need to execute with RTD later this year. And it's timely enough that we can't wait until April 1st. So it'll be a special meeting from 5:30 to 6:30 that would include an executive session during that time and possible action.
Okay. What are the council's desires? Mr. Bullock?
Move to incorporate a special meeting on next Monday's agenda for the purpose of executive session.
Okay. Mr. Amador?
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to allow for an executive session, special meeting and executive session.
And possible action following the
Exactly, and
exec
possible action.
session.
It wouldn't only be for executive session. The council would have to take an action after the executive session in open public session. That's why we need this special meeting and the executive session. I have the motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Now, Mr. McBroom, anything I'm missing on the administrative council business?
The other item of administrative council business, Ms. Halstead sent out to you earlier today. We've received a rather urgent request to speak out on some possible federal legislation that would remove the tax-free status from municipal bonds. If I can quote from her email, Consistent with Commerce City's federal advocacy meetings, the U.S. Conference of Mayors is requesting local government support and signatures to 2 letters to the President and congressional leaders urging them to reject proposals that would reduce or eliminate the federal tax exemption on interest earned from tax-exempt municipal bonds. There are 2 sample letters. We would be requesting that City Council authorize the mayor to sign those 2 letters, one to congressional leaders and one to the President, opposing that type of legislation.
Okay, is there a motion? Mr. McEldowney?
Would move that the council adopt a position in opposition to the aforementioned proposal.
Okay, Mr. Amador? Okay, I have a motion and a second to authorize me to sign 2 letters that will go out to the legislative delegates and the president in opposition of any tax impositions. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion's carried. We covered all the administrative business there, Mr. McBroom. Council have any additional administrative council business to take care of? Seeing no one? Mr. McEldowney. Just always stays on. It's always at the top of my board. Always.
I had just a point of clarification in regard to the Year of the Student measure that we passed earlier this evening. I wanted to confirm that we'll take the final step of formalizing our support on the 2013 Year of the Student website as well. Are we going to take the extra step as in conjunction with our resolution to formalize that on the site as well as a supporting organization?
That was our intent. I'm not sure if that's in the works or not. We will assure that it is.
I thought that was the case. I just didn't want to assume and see it missed, so thanks.
If there be nothing further, we're going to move into reports. City Manager?
Bear with me a moment, Mr. Mayor, while I...
Why don't I skip over you and let's go to Mr. Gaylor.
Mine is real short. I don't have anything to add this evening.
Okay, thank you. See how I bought you a little time? A little time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I needed. We did send out City Manager's update prior to this evening's meeting. Got several updates. One is about our code enforcement efforts that we'll be beginning again this spring. It's referred to as the 3 Cs project. I would encourage you to take a look at that update and contact us with any questions. We also have provided an update regarding ongoing work staff has had with the Aqua Clean company to address potentially faulty installations of water softeners. So a lot of good information there about the great work staff has done. We attached to the City Manager's report the report and recommendations from the Amendment 64 Task Force. So I would encourage you to look through that. Ms. Spratler had thanked the chief earlier this evening for getting back to her on her issue. You can see his update in the City Manager's update this evening as well. We also followed up at Council's request to address concerns the judge had about security in the courtroom and for the council meeting, so we've included the police department's update. And also we have continued to work with a concerned resident with students at Prairie View High School, and a further update was provided by the police department tonight, and we've included it in the report. And as I discussed at the last regular meeting, at each regular meeting we're starting to include a look ahead for council on what the council work schedule looks like over the next several meetings, just to give you kind of a heads up as to what your future agendas are looking like. So as always, would invite any questions that you have about the update.
Thank you. Now I'll get into the council report. Most of the council attended a dinner with School District 14, helping to build those relationships to move the community forward collectively. I attended a meeting on the 4th with 2014 World Lacrosse Championships was the discussion. The 2014 World Lacrosse Championships will be coming to Commerce City to Dick's Sporting Goods Park July of 2014. It will be the biggest sporting event ever held in the state of Colorado, bigger than the World Series. It will include 40 different countries, and the estimated ancillary spending will be over $50 million. So that's a great thing to have for Commerce City to be having come to our area. It's going to also help to encourage economic development in and around the stadium site. We're going over some of the early stages of logistics, and we will be putting together a gathering of local businesses and nonprofits, and including, of course, the other entities within our community to talk about structure and participation so that all of the businesses can reap some of the benefits of having that within our community. So that's moving along nicely. You will be hearing a lot more about that as some time passes us by. I wanted to talk a little bit about the DIA consultation committee meetings that have been taking place. Out of the consultation committee, what it is we have the airport coordinating committee, which includes several members from Aurora, Commerce City, Thornton, Westminster, Brighton, and Adams County, which were the original entities that filed the suit against DIA when they were building for the noise and those particular venues. They constructed the 1988 IGA that requires non-aviation development to go outside of the fence. Aviation development can go inside the fence, and there's discussions about how that really works. So ultimately, the committee was starting to lean towards not working together very well, filing lawsuits. The last piece of that IGA, for 1988 IGA, allows for the Airport Coordinating Committee to select 3 members of the Adams County side, and Denver gets to select 3 members from the Denver side to create this Airport Consultation Committee to look at land uses and potential land uses within and around the airport. Myself, Mayor Steve Hogan from Aurora, and Commissioner Chaz Tedesco are the 3 Adams County representatives that have been working on the consultation committee side of things. On the Denver side, it's Mayor Hancock, one of his chief of staffs, Paul Ryan, and the manager of DIA, Kim Day. And we have had a couple of meetings now. I think we're starting to gain a little ground on how we work together. And I think it's important that everybody understand that if we all file lawsuits against Denver, and even if we win, we lose. If we don't file lawsuits against Denver and we don't get a piece of the pie, we lose. So there's only one way to make this a win-win, and it's trying to work together so that we get what we have coming to us and our residents get what they have coming to them as far as economic development, transportation improvement, and those kind of things. So I've been very much tied up over the past couple of months dealing with multiple DIA coordinating committees, consultation committees, and working group meetings with the other mayors. But we are gaining some ground. I'm sure some of you have been seeing some stuff in the press. But we do have a DIA Airport Coordinating Committee meeting tomorrow. So the saga continues, but I do think we're gaining some ground, and I'm excited to report all of the findings to the council as we move forward. Next, I would like to thank all of the residents for allowing us to go take care of our legislative business in Washington, D.C. I think it was one of the most successful trips that we've had. The asks weren't as great as some of in the past. However, we did get some good clarification on some major issues we've been dealing with in the city. I want to speak briefly about a couple of them. One, I know there's been a huge residential concern about the railroad horns that are being blown at 96th Avenue and Highway 2 due to the fact that that was designated as a quiet crossing or a wayside horn crossing scenario. We went out and met with Secretary LaHood, who's the Secretary of Transportation, and members of the RTA, Railroad Transportation Authority, and we found out that the reason, even though we have spent a lot of money to put in these quiet zones, or what's the other term? Wayside horns, to reduce the noise impact on our residential neighborhoods, especially at night while people are sleeping. That the crossing at 96th Avenue and Highway 2 has both fast and slow-moving trains, and the way the wayside horns are set up, it doesn't pick up the slow-moving trains at the same time that it would pick up for the fast-moving trains. So a slow-moving train, the horns may sound before it gets to the intersection. We have the proper crossing arms in place, and we will be pursuing a waiver system with the RTA, which it would be the first time that this waiver system has been used for wayside horns, from my understanding, according to the RTA. So we have some good guidance on how to get that implemented so that the folks in Eagle Creek aren't going to be having to hear the horn constantly. That is a work in progress. We do have to make some submittals and get some approvals, but at least we have direction on how that takes place. Secondly, I think another big item that a lot of our residents are watching closely is the ramp on Pena. We have a contract with E470 and the City and County of Denver from 1992 that says that in January of 2012, the contract comes due. E470 has to pay for the installation of the ramp. Denver has to allow the ramp to go in and maintain it. So for the last, I don't know how many years it's been, 20 years, we've been waiting anxiously to be able to put our ramp in for westbound Pena off of southbound Tower. Unfortunately, the FAA is not party to that contract. The road was constructed by the FAA with FAA dollars, and there's what they call diversion, and that is money that comes off of the airport that is FAA dollars for maintenance of non-aviation related impacts. So anybody that uses Pena that is not going to or from the airport is impacting their road, and the Inspector General doesn't like the fact that the airport funds have to go to maintain a road that is built by FAA dollars, and those FAA dollars can only go back into FAA resources. So that's how you get diversion, is the non-airport related traffic using the road. We went out again, meeting with Secretary LaHood, the FAA. We found that the solution to the problem is that we have to work with Denver to create a financing mechanism to take care of the impact that would be non-aviation related, that would impact the 1 mile section of Pena Boulevard from the installation of the ramp. So there is a process that has to be followed. I do think we have good, clear direction. We did have a member of Denver's Chief of Staff with us in the room, and I want you all to know that we're moving forward as quickly as we can. I know the residents deserve that on-ramp. I know that on-ramp is crucial to future development along Tower Road and Pena for Commerce City. And there's short-term solutions on impacts and how to cover the cost of those impacts, but there's ultimately long-term solutions that have to be taken care of because of all the other on and off ramps along Pena. The diversion is much greater than just what our ramp would cause, and Denver's been given a grant for $3 million that will give them about 3 years worth of the maintenance costs of the diverted funds. to come up with a longer-term solution. So we will be continuing to improve our relationship with Denver and work towards a common solution so that we can get our on-ramp that we all deserve. But we are working with what we have to work with. At least now we have some clarity in what has to be done. So again, we did take care of a lot of different things. I have to thank the staff for putting together the legislative packets. I was very impressed with our new lobbyist, and we had a good legislative trip to Washington, D.C., and I can assure you and all the residents that you were very well supported by this council in Washington for the week that we were out there taking care of legislative stuff. So thank you for allowing us to go. I'm going to, I want to mention one other thing. I did attend the State of DIA, which took place last week on the 15th. And they talked about some of the ongoings at the airport and what has to take place. So we're gaining ground. I haven't let my guard down yet. We're going to continue to hold the IGA close to our vest. And if anybody steps too far out of line, we're going to use the IGA to protect the residents of our community and the residents of Adams County. But I think it's important that we try to work through it the best we can to achieve a regional win-win for everybody in the region. With that, I'm going to stop with my reports. Is there anything I missed that the council members would like to add?
There's other, but there's nothing you missed.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
One thing I should have mentioned during my report, just to call council's attention, we did, just to tack on to your comments about the federal advocacy meetings the week of March 4th, I guess it was. We did send out earlier today a confidential briefing memo. The reason it's confidential is some of the matters discussed in D.C. are still subject to negotiations, but we wanted to give a comprehensive update to council of what was discussed, and more importantly, some of the key action items coming out.
Is that a nice way to say I said too much?
Not at all. You did not say too much. But I just wanted to call council's attention to that confidential briefing memo.
Sometimes I get this look from you. Don't say too much. The one last thing I have is I wanted to thank Councilman McEldowney for covering my duties while I was out of town for a week. I appreciate it. And if there's nothing further to come before the City Council this evening.
Mr. I have.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank the residents.
Well, you know what? Push your button's on.
Yes.
Mr. Bullock.
I would like to also thank the residents and citizens of Commerce City for sending us to Washington, D.C. We had, just like the mayor said, it was very productive. Matter of fact, of all the meetings I've ever gone to Washington, D.C., this was one of the most productive and insightful meetings, because when they want you to know something, they will put somebody in the room that would tell you under no uncertain terms how it is. And we learned exactly how it was for railroads, for FAA and other items. And then I had another FAA meeting 2 days later with noise, and they let us know, according to the FAA, about noise impacts on different areas in around the metro area, and why we still don't have noise monitors in Commerce City, and why we aren't going to ever get them, because if we had them, we would be reporting the noise that we have on overflying jets that actually impact our city. And it's something I don't know if I can talk about. I'd have to talk to the mayor and Mr. McBroom about one of the discussions we had in our noise meeting about airport acquisitions as what they're doing. But before I can announce it, I would have to find out if it's something I can actually talk about, because I don't want to look. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Douglas.
Yes, and I'd like to thank the citizens for allowing me to go to D.C. It was kind of interesting. We had a snow that kind of shut D.C. down, and folks who were meeting with are from Colorado, so our meetings were not impacted, so we survived the snow question. And I just want to reach out to the citizens and thank them. Thank you.
Councilwoman Elliott.
I, too, would like to thank the fine residents of Commerce City in allowing me to attend the NLC conference. I learned a lot, and with it, I brought back a workshop that I attended. It was the Building Healthy Communities with, basically, it's a focus on the Let's Move program that was initiated by Michelle Obama. And so these were a lot of factors that I thought that we could incorporate with our youth commission and our recreation programs. So I'm hoping to implement some kind of a program or programs available to our youth at very little cost, or if anything, at no cost at all. So it was a great opportunity. I learned a lot. I was able to network with other people from other cities. And I've got to tell you, people know who we are. I was actually very honored that people said, "Aren't you the one that had the dog track?" Just little bits of conversation throughout the conference, and it was a good feeling that people know who Commerce City really is now. So again, thank you so much.
I have one more bit of information since I see Mr. Cerna sitting in the audience. There has been some concern, and I know council members have been getting notifications about a meeting that took place while we were in Washington, D.C. concerning the realignment of I-70. From my understanding, that particular meeting was set up by a professor. CDOT has made its decision, and we do not see that decision being reversed to not relocate I-70, but to keep it on alignment. So I want to dispel those rumors, even though there's some emails flying back and forth about this meeting that took place. This meeting wasn't a Denver meeting, and it wasn't a CDOT meeting. It was a meeting from a private person that is still pushing for realignment. However, CDOT has let us know that they're set in their ways on their direction to not realign. So I just to help dispel some of those rumors, for Mr. Cerna has been keeping me up to speed on a lot of it. While I'm glad I have people in the audience and in our community that can give me a heads up once in a while on a few things. But I did look into it for Mr. Cerna, and that's where it's at, so that any of the rest of the residents want to know. I did thank the staff for their efforts and what they put together, but I also want to thank this council for the great job they did out in Washington concerning our legislative issues. Everybody acted appropriately, very respectfully, and I think that it shows when we go into some of those prospective meetings with our elected officials. So thank you as a council. I appreciate the hard work that you endured while we were out there. If there be nothing further, we're adjourned. Oh, I got to sign a few things. Okay, if you don't mind,
I'm gonna go
chill.
to the bathroom and
Yeah, why don't you go to the bathroom? I'm going to say a few hellos, and then I'm going to.
I'm going to turn off your mic so you don't
Would
have
you
to tell
please?
everybody I'm going to the bathroom.